All set. All set.
All right, thanks, Sean. Thank you, Sean. All right. Going to call our meeting to order and certainly welcome our counselors and deputy mayor and administration and certainly our delegations and those who are watching from the comfort of home. Welcome to our meeting this evening. And we did an electronic closed meeting was held earlier at 4:15, and I reported out during the open session of that meeting. We will dispense with the moment of silence and national anthem, and also the land acknowledgement was read out at our public meeting just prior to our meeting this evening. So I'll go directly to our disclosure of pecuniary interest and to our members. None to be declared. Also, I'd like to report as well is that Councillor Jobin and Councillor Altenhoff will not be present this evening. They are attending their children's graduation. It's a milestone for both of them. We certainly want to send out our congratulations to their children and to mom and dad in that, and we'll gather again at our next public meeting. So with that, members of council, we'll get the minutes. We've got 5 sets of minutes actually, that the May 24, 22 minutes of the regular council meeting, the public council meetings, and the June 7, 2022 minutes of the special council meeting and the public council meeting as were duplicated and delivered to the members be adopted. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councillor Tonio. On those minutes, any errors or omissions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. We do have a supplementary agenda item to deal with. That item is added to the regular meeting agenda regarding to attached report, which is Public Works, Environmental Services, the 2022-18 request to levy the 2021 municipal drain maintenance costs and bylaw 2022-045 Appendix A, and so the supplementary to be adopted. Councillor Tonio, Councillor Houston, moved, supported, all in favor, opposed, if any, that is carried. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to delegations. Give me great pleasure to welcome our friends from Essex Region Conservation Authority, in particular, Katie Stamler, Dr. Katie Stamler, and to our water quality scientist and source water protection manager. And so we are here and waiting for your presentation. And welcome.
Thank you, sir. My mouse was like hovering all over the mute button, but not landing on it. Thank you for having me. And I believe there's a slide deck that Phil is going to pull up for us. Or Sean? Thank you so much. Awesome. Thank you for having me again this year to talk about our source water protection annual progress report. So yeah, you can move on to the next slide. So I just want to start with a little bit of a very brief overview about why we have source water protection. And I think it's important that we always have this reminder that source water protection exists because of the tragedy that happened in Walkerton back in the year 2000, when the wells were contaminated with E. coli, and that led to the death of many individuals and left several others with lifelong illnesses. And out of that, that tragedy came an inquiry that found that there were several mistakes at different levels. And so we had 121 recommendations come out of Justice O'Connor's report, and the Clean Water Act fulfills 12 of those. And what the Clean Water Act does is that it protects our sources of water before they ever enter into a drinking water intake. So it's our job to protect those sources of water to make sure that they're clean and safe for our drinking water. Next slide, please. In the Essex region, we have 7 drinking water intakes, and we draw our water from Lake Erie, the Detroit River, and Lake St. Clair. And the little blue dots on that map are roughly where the intakes are, and then the different color boxes are service areas for each of those intakes. So in Tecumseh, you guys get your water from the AH Weeks water treatment plant in Windsor. Next slide. And in source water, we have what are called vulnerable areas, and those are different areas around our intakes. So the red areas there, those would be intake protection zone 1 or IPZ1. And those are 1 kilometer radius around the drinking water intake. And then those teal areas are the 2-hour time of travel. So if something were to spill within those blue areas, it could make its way to an intake within 2 hours. Next slide, please. And then we also have this very large area called the event-based area. This is a modeled area where it was shown that a fuel spill of a certain volume close to any one of our open water courses, the benzene within that fuel under certain circumstances could find its way to our intakes. So that event-based area is 120 meter setback from any open water course or the limit of regulated area, whichever is larger. Next slide, please. So we're required as a Source Protection Authority to produce an annual progress report every year, and it's due to the ministry on May 1st. And at that same time, we distribute it to our municipalities and we post it online. Those reports are generated from data that we collect from our implementing bodies, and that data is due to us on February 1st of every year. And the annual reports are for the previous calendar year. So this the 2021 report that you received is for the calendar year of 2021. This is the 4th annual progress report for the Essex Region Source Protection Authority, and the plan came into effect in 2015. Next slide. So our Source Protection Committee looks at several factors, and we provide it, the Source Protection Committee determines the score that they're going to give it, and they look at an overall score, our implementation progress, provincial progress, municipal progress, and how we're doing with risk management plans. And we have only 3 scores to give. We have progressing well, satisfactory, or limited progress, and our SPC has given us a score of progressing well on all of those. Next slide, please. And I'm going to go into each of those. So the first one is the implementation progress. And you can see that the percentage or the number of policies that address significant drinking water threats has increased year over year. This year, we had an increase in or a change in policy status for 3 of our policies. And that brings us up to 66% of our policies addressing significant drinking water threats being fully implemented. Next slide, please. So those 3 policies where the status changed, 2 of the policies were directed at the City of Windsor related to their combined sewer overflows. And the City of Windsor had made some really great significant progress this year towards that. And they had you'll see it in the report, and I've lost my language here, but they've finalized a few different reports, and that satisfies what those 2 policies said. So we can move those policies from in progress to fully implemented. The other policy is one that was always a little bit of a weird one, and it's a policy that addresses the potential threat of airplane de-icer chemicals. And what we were able to do with that one is that we're able to review it and say that we don't need to take any further action. So that one moves from in progress to no action required. Next slide, please. So there's 13 policies remaining that are in progress, and it sounds like that's a lot, but we're very close to having these all fully implemented. So 6 of them are prohibition policies, and when we talk about prohibition policies, the SPC only decided to prohibit activities that already were not occurring and were very unlikely to occur in the future. So we've completed the exercise for Lakeshore and Amherstburg, and we're in the process of getting it all completed for Windsor. And the same thing with those 5 outstanding policies for risk management plans. So these are activities that really are not occurring. So we just have to kind of make those sort of final statements on that. And then those policies will be considered fully implemented, and that will be done in this year. The risk management plan policy for the handling and storage of fuel is still considered in progress because we have 2 outstanding remaining existing threats that I'm going to talk about. And then the last policy is one that requires Windsor, Lakeshore, and Amherstburg to prohibit sewage treatment tanks in their IPZ1s. This is done for Windsor and Lakeshore and will be updated when Amherstburg does their next official plan update. Next slide, please. The province is doing very well. Back in 2018, they had already reviewed all of the potential existing threats and determined how to proceed with any of those. I believe they only identified one that was considered a significant drinking water threat, and that was addressed through their prescribed instrument. They have a screening process in place for any new threats. In 2021, they reviewed 3 new applications, determined that none of those were significant drinking water threats. And in total, they've reviewed 33 new applications for potential new significant drinking water threats, but determined that none of them met the criteria to be so. Next slide, please. We also look at our municipalities and we say our municipalities are also progressing well. And some of the things that we look at there is the implementation of those Part 4 policies. And that's done by delegating that authority to IRCA. And some of your staff this morning and also last week attended some risk management training. So we know that we've got the planning and the building staff on board and that they're reviewing those planning and building applications and sending them to us when they need to. We also look at the completion for official plans and zoning bylaws, and we know that Tecumseh finished theirs in 2021, so that gives us a nice yellow star there. And we've got roadside installation that we look at as well. The committee also really wanted to make sure that we acknowledge the challenges that municipalities have faced with COVID-19 in terms of getting their official plans completed, and they really wanted to make sure that that was highlighted in our annual progress report. Next slide. In terms of our risk management plans, our risk management official is, as always, hard at work. They completed 7 risk management plans for existing threats in 2021. 4 of those had to be issued by order. So these were properties where the proponent was not responsive to us. So we had to issue an order. We did communicate with the municipalities where those were ahead of time. So I was in Kingsville and Leamington, so that they knew that that was coming. We didn't have any issue with doing that. And the risk management official also established 8 risk management plans for new threats in 2021, also mostly in Leamington and Kingsville. We have 2 remaining sites that need a risk management plan, and those are for oil pumping sites. And we had been making really good progress with the owner of those sites, but the communication has come to a halt. So again, we've had to issue orders for those risk management plans, and they will be established this summer. Next slide, please. So your municipal staff and other municipal staff in the Essex region just received training in these last couple of weeks to go through what's called our written direction. And that's just this step-by-step process where you're looking at those planning and building applications. Are they in an event-based area? Are they zoned non-residential? And does the property include fuel storage? And if the answer is yes to all of those, then they send those on to the risk management official, where the risk management official then determines whether a risk management plan is required. And in total, we've established 16 risk management plans since the plan came into effect in 2015. Next slide, please. So looking at Tecumseh, you can see the event-based area is all throughout the municipality there. You're not within an IPZ 1 or 2, and that's because there's no drinking water intake that's within the municipality. There are 2 existing fuel tanks that have risk management plans established. Don't ask me where they are. I'm not sure. I would have to look that up. And we have not had to establish risk management plans for any new fuel tanks since the plan came into effect. Next slide, please. So going forward with risk management in 2022, as I said, we did that training already this year. So we've completed that. We're in the process of doing compliance emails out. So we've developed a process for doing that, and we're getting the compliance. So checking in with people that have risk management plans to make sure that they're doing them. And again, we continue to respond to all of our applications as soon as they come in. Next slide, please. So taking a little bit of a switch over to harmful algal blooms, which is also a factor for source water protection. As you know, we identified microcystin, which is the toxin in harmful algal blooms, as a drinking water issue for Lake Erie intakes. Last fall, we also examined the data and determined that we should be also establishing microcystin as a drinking water issue for Lake St. Clair drinking water intakes. And I'll look at that a little bit more on the net after. But first, I want to tell you about this information. So NOAA does their predictions every year, and that's based on the amount of phosphorus that's leaving the Maumee watershed. We know that that's a really good indicator for how severe the bloom is going to be. And this year, they're predicting a bloom severity of around 3 or 4 out of a scale of 10. And that really is due to how dry this spring has been. And the final forecast is happening on Thursday at 11. So you'll see more information about the final forecast after that. Next slide, please. So as I said in the fall, the SPC examined the data for microcystin in Lake St. Clair. We also at that time had some presentations from some University of Windsor students, as well as Kyle Davis from the municipality of Lakeshore. That SPC meeting is actually on IRCA's YouTube channel if you're interested in seeing the information that was presented there. And we look at a number of different factors. We have it flagged by the water treatment operator saying that, you know, this is something that they have to be aware of every year. Then we look at trends in the data. We look at how frequently it happens, the severity, and how long each of those incidents happens. And we actually have higher microcystin concentrations in Lake St. Clair for us on the shores than we do in Lake Erie. So we know it's important to have that identification for Lake St. Clair as well. Next slide, please. So what's happening for us in source water in 2022? It's actually a pretty busy year for me. I've got a pretty aggressive work plan for myself. We're undergoing a comprehensive review and update to the source protection plan and the assessment report. And that's done through our section, what they call section 36 update. So we'll be looking at that, updating the microcystin analysis for Lake Erie, looking at our vulnerability area delineation and scoring, climate risk assessment, looking at all of our plans and policies, making sure that they're all in alignment with the director technical rules that was updated last year, and then undergoing a really daunting task of making sure that everything is AODA compliant as well on top of that. Once we're done with all of those updates, we'll move on to a consultation phase, and we expect that to happen in 2023. So you'll hear from us again there as we go through that formal consultation process and anything that's changed. Next slide, please. So this is my last slide, just a little bit more information from the SPC. We created a video this year. You may have seen the roadsides around. That one is on Front Road in Amherstburg. And sometimes people don't really know what those signs mean because they're not really very descriptive. So the SPC created a video that talks about what those road signs mean. And there's also a bunch of communication that came out of Conservation Ontario this year. So if you're interested in checking that out, go ahead. And there's just the link to the source protection website. And that's all I have for you today.
All right. Well, thank you very much on your presentation. Any questions or comments? Or not? Just a question. You know, you made reference about storage tanks and so forth. What is the regulation from the, you know, for gas bars or gas stations that have holding tanks that are in the ground close to lake level or close to the lakes? What is you know, the regulation? I mean, like, all I'm saying is we have one in town. Mm-hmm. And it's very, you know, it's just across from Riverside Drive. And what would be the you know, when you talk about, I'm sure you've inspected them and so forth. Do they get a special scrutiny because they're so close to the water?
It's a good question. So with gas stations, they're below ground storage. So for us, what's considered a significant drinking water threat for us is above ground storage, where you might have that potential for a spill that would get into a water course. The below grade, we actually don't really look into ourselves. That would fall under TSSA and under the ministry to inspect those.
Okay. All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor McKetty.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Katie. When you mentioned above and below ground for spillage, what about biodigesters? Are those under source? Are those under management plans?
Biodigesters specifically. So there's a bunch of prescribed drinking water threats. So it would depend on what's being stored there. So there's storage of different. So you're thinking like storage of manure kind of thing?
More greenhouse waste.
Greenhouse waste. Okay.
And my concern is if there's anything like that, you know, maybe if you could share that with the administration, because again, if there are regulations and risk management plans that we can put in place, I'd like to make sure that that it is addressed in that regard as well, because there is potential for spillage, and then it goes into our source water.
Yeah, so the way that source protection works, and you know, and all its quirks and quirks and whatever else, we have our intakes, and the intakes have vulnerability scores, and the activities have threat scores. And there's some fancy math that goes on, and essentially we end up with a lookup table that says, you know, does this vulnerability score mean that this activity is a threat? So what you're describing is not considered a threat for our intakes. And it's always an interesting thing, right? That battle between, you know, what's a source water problem and what's an environmental problem. So source water is only looking at, is it a threat specifically to the intake for drinking water intake? If there's something that you feel like is not being addressed, then we can look at it as a local threat, and then we have to elevate that to the ministry to say that this is something our municipalities would like us to look at as a potential local threat. And then there has to be modeling and science done behind that. And unfortunately right now, there's not funding for that. But if it's something that the municipalities are concerned about, a potential threat, then we have to elevate that to a request to the ministry to look at it as a local threat.
Very good. Thank you, Katie.
You're welcome.
I just want to pick up from the deputy mayor on that. For me, the concern would be on the digestrate itself, which has high levels of nitrogen and probably phosphates. I don't know. But if and it kind of becomes a nutrient management thing on how much of this product's put into on the field, and is it close to tributaries that carry out to the lake. So I get the intake for us, for example, if it's the Pike Creek and into the lake, it's quite a distance downstream to the intake. But the other aspect of that is the algae bloom. And by adding, high concentration of, digestrate, in a good example, most fields now are tiled, and somebody puts it down, and then you get an inch or two of rain. And so it in the tile and into the Pike Creek and out in the lake and so forth. So I don't know in terms of, who would be monitoring that more than anything, OMAFRA or MOE, or does IRCA have anything in its manual or and saying, okay, nutrient management, and that goes for all farms, whatever you're putting in there. So that would be because more and more in 2025, we got to get rid of our organics,
right? Somehow.
And it seems for some the digesters are the way to go. I'm not convinced that is the technology of tomorrow and so forth. But what's your thought, and how to go? I don't want put you in a hot seat on
No,
this.
that's okay. So I actually just had to dig into this a little bit, because there's some funny, you have to like cross-reference a bunch of different pieces of legislation when you're working with source water, because it'll have the definition is in this piece of legislation and whatever. So it depends on the type of material and where it's being applied. So is it, so that what you're describing, I believe would fall under non-agricultural source material or potentially processed organic waste. And both of those, the application of that would fall either, depending on whether it's being applied on agricultural land, that would be under the purview of AMAFRA. If it's being applied to non-agricultural land, it would be under the Ministry of the Environment. The application of that particular material would require a nutrient management plan or an environmental compliance approval, one way or the other. So the province would have to be involved with that. And again, just because of where our intakes are, it won't fall into being a significant drinking water threat. But you're right, there is an element to, does it have an impact on the environment and an impact onto our contribution of nutrients into Lake St. Clair and contributing to those harmful algal blooms. We did just recently complete some work on a phosphorus management plan where we looked at some of our different sources of nutrients and what we might do about that in future. one of the examples that where we saw some good progress is in the Puce River, where we were able to work with the municipality and Aqua to work on their discharge from their lagoon, so that we're able to reduce we were seeing some algal blooms that were happening in the Puce River itself. So we're able to address that. IRCA is not the regulating body for water quality issues. So if somebody were to report to us that they see a spill, we would send them to the Ministry of Environment, to their Spills Action Center. What we do is we're out there doing routine monthly monitoring. So my team will, I sit here, at home in front of my computer, and they send me text messages and pictures. So if they see something that's out of the ordinary, we report it to the Ministry of Environment. So I hope that sort of answered your question. It certainly is stuff that, we think about, but can't necessarily address it through the Clean Water Act, but it is stuff that we think about.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Okay, I hear none. So first of all, thank you for the presentation, but I've got two resolutions that I have to deal with on that. One of them is obviously if I have a motion to receive the report that's been presented to us by Katie. Moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. And also, if we could, while you're here, and I'm sure you're curious to see about what our water folks are doing here as well. So we do have a source water protection 2021 annual progress report to be brought forward on the agenda for discussion and consideration. So I'll call upon the director to summarize the report and then bring a recommendation forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. The report before you today, report PWES 2022-24, has a recommendation that the report be received. It basically highlighted a lot of the information that Ms. Stamler has already presented to council. The source protection progress reports are submitted to town on an annual basis, as Ms. Stamler indicated, and the 2021 source protection annual progress report and the 2021 risk management official annual progress report are both attached to the administrative report for council, and it highlights the progress made toward the implementation of the Essex Region SPP up to the end of 2021. And other than that, I too wanted to offer my thanks to Ms. Stamler for coming out and making the presentation today as well.
Okay, so on that report, members of council, any questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, then a motion that the report PWES 22-24 source water protection 2021 annual progress report be received. Councilor Tonio, Deputy Mayor McKetty. The motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Ms. Stamler, thank you very much, and looking forward to seeing you again next year.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, take care. All right, we've got 5 pieces of communications, members of council. If I have a motion to receive, Councilor Tonio and Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Is there anything out of the communication pieces that members of council would like to address? Not okay. We'll move on to communication of action. This is a yearly ask from CN Rail and dated June 15, 2022. The National Rail Safety Week. It's recommended that the corporation and town Tecumseh support National Rail Safety Week to be held from September 19th to 25th, 2022, and a motion to support. Deputy Mayor McKetty, Councilor Tonio, questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Thank you. Committee minutes, we have the Town of Tecumseh Business Improvement Area, April the 20th, 2022, and May 18th, 2022. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes? Councilor Houston moves, Councilor Tonio support. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Quarter revision, June 7, 2022, the La Chance Drain. We have a motion to approve the minutes. Councilor Tonio moves them, supported by Councilor Houston. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We'll move on to reports. And the first report, we have our Chief Administrative Officer, Ms. Evans, and the People and Culture CAO PC 2022-04, right to disconnect policy. I'll call upon the Director of People and Culture to summarize the report. Bring it forward.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara, and good evening, members of council. November 30th, 2021, the Ontario government passed Bill 27, Working for Workers Act 2021, and it received royal assent on December 2nd, 2021. The right to disconnect policy requires employers who employ 25 or more employees to have a written policy on disconnecting from work in place for all employees. And employers must have a right to disconnect policy in place by June 2022 and must provide a written policy to their employees. So Bill 27 required an amendment to the Employment Standards Act and imposed a requirement for employers to establish a right to disconnect policy and introduces specific obligations that are required by the policy, like the fact that employees must receive a copy within 30 days of preparing the policy. And if there are any changes or updates, employees must receive the amended policy within 30 days. And new employees must also receive a copy within 30 days. The town of Tecumseh recognizes that employees have a right to disconnect from work. The policy provides the framework for disconnecting from work in consideration of the requirements of Bill 27. It should be noted, however, that the policy does not supersede the provisions outlined in the Employment Standards Act or the individual employee contracts for all non-union management and administrative staff. While the right to disconnect is vital, the policy also outlines the situations that can arise where it's not possible to deal with matters during normal working hours. There may be unavoidable situations when it is necessary to contact employees outside of normal working hours. So the policy also highlights specific roles for the town and management and each employee, and also establishes specific protocols for correspondence, communication, and meetings. In addition, it also provides a recourse mechanism for employees that are experiencing challenges disconnecting. So administration is recommending that the right to disconnect policy report be received and that the attached right to disconnect policy be approved. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara. The question for Michelle regarding these policies, and I know it's happening across different sectors in the public regarding the right to disconnect. Is this town-wide employee going from CAO to senior administration to town employees? And if that's the case, how do we differentiate when we receive emails as elected officials and we send it as information? I don't expect a response, but am I still able to send that email? And then the employee can decide, back when they get back to work on Monday, respond to it. Or do I need to wait till Monday to remember to send that email? Because we do have cell phones available and that's part of our work. And so, is my expectation that I can still send out emails 24/7. If I'm up 3 a.m. and I send an email to Marg, I don't expect her to respond, but it allows me to get that peace of mind to sleep. So I just want to make sure that I'm still able to do that under this policy.
Yes, so the short answer to that is yes, you absolutely can still send emails. There's a stipulation in the policy that identifies that with respect to certain staff, they're always going to be in a position where they would need to respond depending on the situations at hand. If there were situations where they were urgent and an email needs to be identified as such, then we would identify that as urgent. But certainly from your perspective and any of the counselors and the mayor, that wouldn't stop you from sending any emails as you normally would.
Thank you. And just as a follow-up is, I know it might not be part of the right to disconnect, but in terms of a policy where an email is sent, is there any kind of general rule of thumb where within 2 business days that an acknowledgement that that email has been received? Could that be a practice and a good practice to do? I know most do it, but sometimes you send an email, you don't get no response. So you don't know if it's acknowledged or received, if it went through. So just kind of the other way around.
I'll defer the service level standard issue to the CAO.
Thank you, Michelle, and through the mayor to the deputy mayor and council. Certainly what you're referring to is a service level standard related to customer service. And we are in the process, as you're aware, leading out of the 2021 org review of developing our customer service strategy, which will address such matters. There is kind of a handful of older policies within the organization that relate to such matters, and part of the role of this strategy is to give those a refresh or parse out the important parts and be able to set some standards that will then communicate out to the organization.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
No, I think that's important that, it's well spelled out. I mean, for us, for the politicians, we're 24/7, 7 days a week. I've gotten them at 3 in the morning, and I've gotten them, Sundays, Mondays, doesn't matter, and so forth. So I do understand the legislation, but also for us, there's emergency situations that need to be well spelled out for, whether it's snow, floods, electricity, whatever, that has no time limit. You can't just say, well, I'm booking off but sorry about your 4 feet of water in your basement and so forth. But anyway, it is, I think there's enough flexibility, but I mean, if I want to, and send an email out and I want a clarity on a report, well, that can wait till, business hours and so forth. So whenever there's new legislation that comes out, there are some that use it to the extreme and others, don't and so forth. So as long as it's well laid out, well documented and understood, then, I get it. I mean, nobody wants to be bugged on mundane stuff at 8 o'clock on a Friday night or a Sunday morning at 7:30 in the morning, and so forth. I get that. And I really believe it is a good piece of legislation, and so forth. And I'm glad to see that it also applies to the private sector, not only the public, but private as well. And so we'll see how it all unfolds, but I'm sure it's in good hands with yourself, Michelle, and so forth. But as long as people understand, that the do's and don'ts and what's an emergency and what isn't an emergency.
And to that end, we will be ensuring that the rollout of this policy includes communication with staff around those aspects as well. So there's an understanding of the escalations required in emergency situations, that this doesn't preclude that and nothing changes with respect to that.
Well, that's good. I promise I won't call you before 6 a.m. in the morning. So any further questions on the report? then I need a motion to first receive the report as presented and also the attachment 1 to the report be the right to disconnect policy be approved. Moved by Deputy Mayor Buchetti, supported by Councilor Tonio. Receipt and adoption. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right, we'll move on to community and recreation services. So we have CRS 2022-09 and 2023 to 2026 Parks Capital Works Plan. I'll call upon a director to summarize the report and recommendation, and that is a very in-depth 4 years of capital works. So I will pass it on to you, Mr. Anthony. Bring your report forward, and then we'll certainly deal with it at the proper time.
Thank you, Mayor McNamara and members of council. Certainly the report tonight is the Parks 5-year capital work plan, and which was not presented as normal with this year's 2022 budget. And that was done specifically as we were going through a series of meetings with council on strategic priorities and capital projects that really were not in the queue from past years, and resulted as a result of the Sportsplex not moving forward as was projected. And these are some of the amenities that were added. So certainly the report this evening will lay out our work plan for the next 4 years. And then when we come to budget time for 2023, you will receive another 5-year plan, which again would be the current 2023 and moving to the 2027 at that time. So this evening, I will highlight a few of the additions to the report as reflective of the capital priorities. And certainly, as we did go through the capital priorities sessions, we did acknowledge to council that we still would have our annual allocations of projects that need to go through to keep our infrastructure in place and our life cycling up to date. So you'll look in the parks in 2023, the first project is Southfield Park, and that's a multi-use court, which would be a basketball play court, whatever that could be done. And that would be on the Southfield Park. As well, we have the artificial turf at McAuliffe Park, and that's in combination and in partnership with the McAuliffe Group, and we're working with them. Then we have the artificial turf at Lesueur. We have open negotiations with Lesueur to review with the school board to place artificial turf on the main field, and we would be a partner with certainly a joint use agreement. The Lakewood Park design of washrooms and splash pads. So this year we are doing the design. There's an RFP out right now for an architect to do the design of the washrooms. And it's certainly the goal to have the outdoor washroom, the mechanical room, and the splash pad put in place in 2023. Those were the main projects that were added on top of the normal list. And then at the bottom, we do have project management, which would be assigned to those projects. Moving to 2024, in scenario 2, you recall, we did have an overall scenario of Lacoste Ballpark. And in 2022, we came back with a revision to the capital, and we went with the grandstand replacement, dressing rooms, the backstop. This is and this would only be done in the event that we are eligible and we do obtain senior levels of government funding. That would be artificial turf the field, replace the lights with LED lights, do some more work on the storage area and some of the outside stands area outside of the main grandstand. And again, that's only there showing it's in the budget. And we will certainly continue to go after upper levels of government funding to hopefully make that a reality. Artificial turf at McAuliffe Park, that was the second field, and that would be a baseball diamond that we were looking at to artificial turf. And if you recall, that goes back again to our strategic priorities and back to the Sportsplex project. And then the artificial turf at Lesueur, we're also going to talk to them about a second field so that we have the ability. We do have a joint use agreement. We're also in negotiations right now with the French Catholic Board to extend that agreement and add on the additional field. We work with them, which is at the south end of the main track or towards Tecumseh Road. The pickleball lighting, that would be in 2024. We want to get a couple years under our belt and see whether there is lighting required. There may not be, but to ensure that we do move forward, we have the infrastructure put in place. Everything is there except for the light poles and standards. And then Southfield Park, splash pad and washrooms. Once again, that came from a result of our master plan update and also through the capital priorities discussions with council. And project management for all of those, again, is in that. 2025, we have the Lakewood Park Picnic Shelter. That was, again, moved out from the original package of doing the outdoor washrooms with it, but that's been moved to 2025. And then in 2026, that's just back to regular programming for our actual life cycles. You'll also note in our trails budget, in 2023, we are looking to put a trail in, the perimeter trail as well in Southfield Park. And again, that came from the discussions with the Skyline development of the residents, what they want to see in that park. And as well, that neighborhood, you know, a perimeter trail, washrooms, splash pad, and a play court, which has all been looked to be added to that park. And then the tree planting, which normally goes on each year, is we put $30,000 a year and plant X amount of trees to continue to meet our obligation to green Tecumseh. So with that, what we would be looking for this evening, we counsel that the parks capital projects as summarized in the attachment 1 to report CRS 2022-09, 2023 to 2026 Parks Capital Works Plan be adopted, and that the 2023-2026 Parks Capital projects be funded through the life cycle reserves, the infrastructure reserve, and available grants as set out in attachment 1. I'm open to any questions, and just so council's aware, this evening you'll receive 2 reports. You'll receive the parks, the forestry, and the trails. You'll receive the buildings. The arena one will be coming to you at the next meeting, and that certainly has the triple gymnasium as part of that presentation we made as a scenario too. So I just want to make sure council was aware of that in case they wondered where that was here. That's coming in the arena report, which you'll see at the next council meeting. So I'm open to questions from anybody regarding the report.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony, for the report. Any questions or comments? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, no questions. Thank you, Your Worship. Just a comment to thank Paul. It looks like it's evenly spread throughout the town. I noticed a lot of high active parks that will benefit from all of those activities. So I'm sure the residents will be quite pleased when these years do come up. And if we stick to that plan, there's going to be a lot of active healthy lifestyle ability in these parks. Not only they're just green space, but now you've actually got a lot of amenities there for them to enjoy.
Further questions or comments? Yes, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Paul Anthony, great report, and as Deputy has said, you know, it's very in-depth, you know, and I think when the residents see this and see what we have coming years down the road, I'm certainly impressed because, you know, there is a lot here. I'm just wondering how best we can share this with, you know, our members of government who are now sitting, MPP Dowie and MP Kuczmarchuk, who, you know, are now in their seats for, you know, quite some time, but, you know, with upper level, you know, grant funding opportunities. I'm just wondering the best if we, you know, call them in and say, hey, here's what we have going on, just, you know, to make you aware. Do we, you know, forward this as a copy? I'm just throwing it out there how we can make them aware, because when they're sitting there, you know, having the discussions, they know what our plans are.
So if I may, I'll take a first stab at it and then I'll turn it to the CAO. So yes, we have been actively for the last number of years, certainly the both MPP and the MP's offices know us well. I think they know us by first name now. We have had the opportunity to introduce ourselves personally. I do not believe there's a moment that goes by that the mayor, when he does meet with IRIC, that one of the projects or all of the projects may be mentioned. We have just filled out a delegation form for AMO, which we'll be making a presentation towards the believe it's the triple gymnasium. So that will be going to AMO, which is coming up. So yes, Councillor Houston, I can assure you, either through the mayor's office, to the CAO's office, or through my office, they hear from us regularly, and they don't forget us.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, we've got their numbers on the Rolodex. And so the answer is yes, yes, and yes. I think it's a great opportunity, to move forward, but go ahead. I'm CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just to add to Paul's thorough answer, these documents are invaluable when it comes to applying for grant opportunities that do arise. And it shows that, we're thoughtful and organized, and that the leadership has turned its minds to the capital priorities for the town. And that helps us benefits greatly in our pitch to say why choose us. And it really also helps the MP and the MPP to advocate on our behalf, because we are prepared and we know the direction that we want to head. So yeah, all of this is very good information for them to have in support of an application.
Absolutely. And I think to your credit, Mr. Anthony, as well, is, we've been able to keep, our supporters out there, whether it's Tecumseh Baseball Club, the pickleball people, a lot of folks that are ready to contribute in support of fundraising. And a lot of the organizations are still there. And I think that is another piece that to send a message to the provincial and federal counterparts that this is a project that is well thought of and well laid out. And I'd be remiss if I didn't thank also Mr. Kitsos and corporate and all of the senior management team who sat down and said, okay, this is council's vision. They want all this, but we put our best foot forward at the time, but that didn't work out. But you know what? I think the silver lining here is I think we're going to end up with a better, product for the residents, because it really enhances all of our parks. And the other thing that I like, it's going to bring opportunities for folks not to have to travel all the time to one area to do all the sports. So it spreads the wealth to the rest of the community. And, even to the point when we look at the Maidstone acquisition, that's way at the far end of the municipality. There'll be assets there and so forth. So I think the end result is going to be a well thought of product, and most importantly, one that we can afford and something that's going to be state of the art. And in the report, when we see the partnerships with the French School Board and others who are putting skin in the game with us. And so I think that's an important piece. I think that we can show the province and the federal government, that it's needed and it's accepted, and the folks are ready to put skin in the game. And so I think it's a great plan. So I commend administration for putting a plan together. For us, we like to throw it on the plate and say, we want this, 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 and this. And then we tell administration, you make it work. And I think it came up with a very thoughtful and bold response in terms of the requirements to make our community one of the best. And well, it is one of the best. What am I talking about? We're just going to make it better. That's all. Okay. So anything further on that piece, Mr. Anthony?
No, I'm good. One thing I did not state at the start, which I should have. I should certainly acknowledge the three managers in our department that certainly put together these plans with myself. And that would be Casey Colthurst for the parks and the forestry. Dan Walecki, who you will see later on with the building 5-year. And then certainly Dan again next week, or next council meeting, and also Brett Palmer plays a big hand in this. So I certainly want to make sure I acknowledge the manager's contributions, large contributions to these plans.
Well, that's what I meant to the team, you know, it's everybody, but I'm glad you acknowledge your group and your team and so forth, but wonderful. So, so then on that, we need to adopt the Parks Capital Projects plan that's been brought forward and summarized by our director, and that the Parks and Capital Projects summarize in attachment 1 to report CRS 2022-9, 2023-26 Parks Capital Works Plan be adopted, and that the 2023-2026 Parks Capital Projects be funded through the life cycle reserves, the infrastructure reserves, and available grants as set out in attachment number 1. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, supported by Councilor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried unanimous. Okay. Next item is the Municipal Buildings Capital Works Plan. And that's going to be brought forward by Mr. Anthony. You going to bring that one forward,
Yes.
or with Mr. Walicki?
Yes, I will address the buildings. So once again, as we spoke earlier, we're looking this evening to have the municipal buildings capital projects as summarized in attachment 1 be adopted, excuse me, and that the 2023-2026 municipal building capital projects be funded through the building life cycle reserves. So once again, we have a number of projects that are listed in this 4-year lookout from 2023 to 2026, but I'll put again the highlights in some of the projects that were discussed during our capital priorities discussions, so council will see where they do show up. So the Cata Library, we're looking to the renovations in 2023. That's $1 million project with $700,000 coming from the town, $300,000 coming from the Essex County Library. We've had discussions. We're in the middle of some, the architect is doing some public sessions or sessions with staff. We're going to meet next with the library staff, and then we'll be setting up two groups of 3 with council to have them review and have some input with the consultant. So those will be coming forward, and that project we're looking to have the tender documents ready and hopefully be able to tender first thing in 2023 to move forward with the construction of that project. As well, the Maidstone Recreation Complex, that's the outdoor washrooms. Although this is a parks related function, we've moved it to the buildings because it is a building that we're acquiring, and it will be under Dan's responsibility or jurisdiction. So we'll be looking at outdoor washrooms at $500,000. That would be for the architect and the construction of the washrooms. And then in 2024, we have it slated as a TBA. So that's Fire Hall number 1, the expansion. And that is, as a TBA, as in the notes, it does highlight that we have to finish the fire master plan to see what is required. And once the fire master plan is completed and adopted by council, we'll be in a better position then to look, what do we need to do to expand? Then we would secure the services of an architect, and we would be able to put together a budget on what would be required. The town hall pavilion replacement, that's the pavilion behind us. We had held off that strictly a couple of years because of the proposed sportsplex, and would have been right on its doorstep, and we would have had to do something to amalgamate it into the project. So now that we're moving forward at this point in time, that pavilion does get used. We did use it a couple of weeks ago for the barbecue, and I think council members that were able to attend, or anybody in the past, can see that one's seeing the end of its life, and it does get a lot of use between the ball diamond, the skate park, some of the events from the town. A lot of our staff like to go out there and sit for lunch hour under the shade. So, and the proximity to the arena, we do have people come over. So that's an important piece. And then in 2024 as well, there's a proposed for the Maidstone Recreation Center that would be paving the parking lot and potentially looking to add a 2 to 3, possibly 4 court pickleball complex in that portion. So Ward 5 would then have their own pickleball area, which again, there has been a lot of requests coming from that area as well. Some are using the tennis courts out there, the basketball courts to have a pickup game, but we all know that the sports, as much as it would like to, they need their own facilities. It's not a good mixture because they compete for the same time frame all of the time. And then in 2025, we have the Maidstone Recreation Center, some building renovations inside, and Weston Park to redo the washroom facilities out there. Once again, we will now hit almost all of our parks. The only washroom facility that won't have been renovated once Weston has done is St. Mary's, but at this point in time, St. Mary's is operational. We did do some work on the roof of the picnic shelter a year ago. So we certainly have once again tried to spread out what we can to ensure all the wards are covered. And then there's the annual building life cycle repairs, HVAC units, et cetera, that need to be looked at as they go. So that is the buildings 5-year capital projects. And I'm open for any questions that council may have regarding it.
Yeah, just before I open it up, Mr. Anthony, too, is like we're going to expend like millions of dollars here and so forth. And we've had quite a run in the last 2 or 3 years in vandalism in a lot of our parks and so forth. I know Lakeshore now is going to invest close to 40,000 in surveillance in that area. Maybe it's time and I don't know, maybe it's already included in there. I don't know. I didn't see any notices of that, but I think we should be looking at real enhanced security in protecting our infrastructure, because the damages that they're causing is severe, and it's very unfortunate that we need to do that. But is there any talk at this stage too, as we bring in these new facilities and in the existence that we have to enhance our security?
Yes, certainly. Two parts to that question, Mayor McNamara. Number one, we are looking at, as we're building these newer renovations to these washroom facilities, we're building them as vandal-proof as possible. So a lot of times you'll see now that these structures are built without eaves troughs. They have a cement apron around it. So yes, it's unfortunate when you're walking to go to the washroom, you might get wet, but it's, the vandalism. The insides are, the equipment that's coming is, we try to be as vandal-proof as possible. The second part to that question is, yes, the Director Firth from IT has certainly worked with us, and you will see in a plan when their 5-year capital plan comes out for next year that we're looking at a series of introduction, upgrading our existing security camera systems to try to combat that, as well as adding some in some key areas. I can tell you tonight, we have at the Lacoste Park, we've had a few instances where they're stuffing, paper towels, toilet paper in the washroom and the toilets, flooding we have a surveillance on tonight. It's been happening the last couple of nights. Our guards have witnessed it. So we have somebody that's sitting there tonight watching, and we're going to get the message out to the community. This is our members of our community, whether it's youth, young adults, young teenagers, whoever it is, that it's not acceptable to go into these facilities that are taxpayer facilities and damage them for no reason. There's no benefit for anybody. And we will certainly look to expand through communications, our communication department, to get the message out. We're going to look to try to get some, some neighborhood watches. Once our groups are out there playing, it's a lot less. There's going to be vandalism because the parks are heavily used. And the members are there to protect them, because those facilities are there for the members and the regular public. And certainly the public, I know already the pickleballers, they walk to the washroom, and if it's, overflowing and stuff, they're not, they understand that. And so we are going after to do what we can do. And to answer your question again, is we will be looking at surveillance systems.
I'm going to let them know we're going to arrest, charge, and we're going to ask for restitutions. And there's not a second chance. That's it. I think it's costing us far too much money and in repairs, and it's shameful that people would do that to things and items, and in particular to enhance recreation for everybody. Just so. I'm glad, and I see the passion in your voice, and like all of us. And this is, it's not acceptable behavior at all. And they should be punished to the highest level that we can. Councilor Tonio.
Thank you. Yeah, and on that note, we did used to have the Park Watch program back in the day, so maybe we can reinstill that, which is basically a letter sent out to residents that back onto our parks with our curfews, different things to watch out for, and all the phone numbers to contact if they see inappropriate behavior. So maybe we need to reinstill that with the OPP and mail out some letters to our residents that live along the park and ask them to use their eyes also to watch what they paid for too, these beautiful parks, and they would love to keep them beautiful and keep the crime down. So why not use our citizens that way too? So just a suggestion to the CAO if we can maybe do that with the OPP.
Yep. And get the bikes patrol back out.
Absolutely. Foot patrol and bike patrol makes a big difference.
Yep. Okay, questions or comments on the building? Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Worship, through you, Mr. Anthony. Yeah, again, great report, and we've got a ton of stuff, in the works. Just had my first library board meeting the past week, and they did comment about how happy they were with the meeting that the board had with yourself and the prospective renovations that are coming to our library. So, I've got a meeting set up with our acting CAO at the library board just to get up to speed all things library. But they did, mention how great the meeting was, and they'll be allocating funds for their portion to the library renovations in the upcoming 2023 budget. So I just wanted to pass that along.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, any further questions or comments? Hearing none, then that the municipal buildings capital project as summarized in attachment 1 to report CRS 2022-10 to 2023 and to 2026 municipal buildings capital works plan be adopted, and that the 2023-26 municipal buildings capital projects be funded through the building life cycle reserve. Moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimous. All right, we'll go to C, which is the, again, from CRS 2022-12. That's the Essex Power Youth Community Fund. I believe Mr. Anthony,
Yes.
step forward.
I will, this is another good news story. This is our partnership with Essex Power, and for the past number of years, they provided $10,000 to each of the communities that they are shareholders to invest back into youth programming, either through some of the organizations or also programs that the town runs engaging the youth. So the list does go through quite extensively of what we have been able to accomplish. In 2020, it was a kind of a down year. That's when we really got hit by COVID and not a lot of opportunity. But Essex Power was very, very willing to move forward and to bring forward all the funds that were not used that year to reallocate them to the next year, which again, last year we ran a number of programs. Our programming staff really stepped up and provided the community with a large number of programs that they could participate in. And then once again, Essex Power, there was a few dollars left over. I believe it was about $1,500 from 2021 that they allowed us to carry over to 2022. So again, this year, we have $11,563 to put towards youth programming again. So once again, very good program, a great partnership with Essex Power. And this report is just more for information to let council know what was done with those funds and the continuing partnership, and it'll be done again this year.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. So if I could have a motion to receive his report, unless you've got questions. Okay, moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Move on to Development Services, DS 2022-24 Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act 2022 summary report. Mr. Hillman, our Director of Planning, will bring that report and summarize it and bring forward recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening. This legislation, Bill 109, was actually had royal assent back in April of this year, just before the election commenced with the calling of the writ. And the report is intended to summarize for council some of the changes that have been implemented that will affect the town, and emphasis being placed on changes to the Planning Act and the Development Charges Act. So I'll go through very quickly, Mr. Mayor, the report in summary, and leave the floor for some questions, and then we'll make our way to the recommendation, if that's acceptable to yourself. So one of the significant changes to the Planning Act was that the province determined that the site plan approval, which under the Planning Act sat with council, is the process we've used for many, many years here, will effective July 1st for any applications that come in post July 1st as a complete application, that it is to be delegated down to administration. So that's a fairly significant change in the Planning Act. And it will, to a certain extent, not change much of the processes internally as to how we review these documents that come in and the site plans and so on, but it changes something at the end. We, as you know, would write a report to council and seek approval or authorization to execute agreements that might be related to that site plan approval. That will no longer by legislation be allowed. So the report summarizes some of the changes to the delegation that has occurred or is occurring or is proposed to occur throughout the Essex region. And ultimately, the recommendation that we are bringing to council as part of the delegation is, figuring out where does that delegation go. So the recommendation is that it would, by bylaw, be delegated the ultimate approval to the director, myself, or in my absence, the manager planning and local economic development, and that the delegation of signing authority for site plan agreements that quite often go along with these approvals would be delegated to the clerk and the CAO, Chief Administrative Officer, and that the delegation bylaw would provide a blanket authorization for that to occur as agreements go forward over the next period of time. And finally, Mr. Mayor, it's proposed that an information email be provided to council quarterly at a minimum as site plan approvals are issued by the municipality. And of course, we're open to hearing comments from council on that timeframe. And you would have noticed in the chart, municipalities are approaching that in a variety of manners. Site plan application, another matter that was changed through the Planning Act change of 109 is that there's now a mechanism to deem them complete. And two interesting changes that came forward that could have implications for the municipality is that there's a refund of fees if approvals do not happen within specified period of time. So for site plans, it's within 60 days. If a decision is not made, half of the application fee would go back if it's requested from the applicant. Within 90 days, 75%, and then within 120 days, 100% of the fee would go back. The comments we've added here, and this would come into effect, Mr. Mayor, as of January 1st, 2023. One of the comments we've made in the report is that we will want to, and we continue to evaluate how we will deem applications complete, which is the trigger to start timelines. Because we want to make sure that just because you say you have a stormwater study, that in fact it has met a threshold of meeting the requirements of what's needed to allow us to evaluate and approve proposals. Something very similar has happened with the zoning bylaw amendment process in terms of refunds. The province has, I guess this would be the classic carrot versus the stick, has decided that for applications that aren't processed in a certain period of time, again, we will have to refund applications. And it sets out for 90 days, 150 days, and 210 days if applications aren't decided upon. There's a 50%, 75%, and 100% refund on an application fee if a request is made. Again, that's effective January 1st. Changes to the Development Charges Act, it's minor, relatively minor. The treasurer has to issue basically a statement annually as to the status of the reserve, and that was issued previously in accordance with the Act. We are now required to ensure that that is posted on the town's website. And finally, Mr. Mayor, quickly, financial implications. We did take note that, these changes and they come on top of other changes that have been made over the last few years. They do impact our ability to review these applications comprehensively in a timely manner. So we will monitor, because of the tracking that's required now, we will monitor how that affects our capacity. And for both our departments, Public Works and Engineering and Finance, and we will report back to council if certain needs arise as a result of some of these changes. So, Mr. Mayor, that is a rather brief summary of the report. And at the appropriate time, I can certainly read in the recommendation that is before council.
Well, you hit the real highlights in terms of, I think, I know that this has been talked about for probably the last couple of years that I can remember. AMO has some real concerns. The timelines are extremely aggressive in certain areas. I mean, some of it, obviously, when you dealing with applications and so forth, sometimes it's not just the municipality that's involved, depending on where it is, environmental assessments, if you've got drainage to close to a tributary, you've got federal and you've got provincial and you've got IRCA and you've got certainly a lot of things that has to be dealt with and in a proper manner. One of the things, Mr. Hillman, that a couple of weeks ago, I had a meeting with, obviously I sit on the, represent the county at the Housing Advisory Committee with the county and the city. And Mr. Tom Hunt is your colleague from the city, summarize a report to the Housing Committee, and part of it where they're anticipating, like even the city, of doubling their staff and doubling the costs. And so you alluded to the fact that, the building department has to deal with the engineering department, it's got to deal with the finance department and so forth. And that to me weighs a little heavy at this stage here too, the impact of that, because, then what is the price of the fees? To make up for that. That shouldn't be on the backs of the property tax owners. We go back to growth should pay for growth and so forth. So there's a lot of unknowns that are going to hit us beyond January of 23. But I know there's a pretty serious lobbying going on with the Western Wardens Caucus, the Eastern Wardens Caucus, AMO, and telling them that there's some real issues. And no doubt in my mind, my opinion, this has been led by developers in the GTA in Toronto, not the small towns. That's not a huge issue in that area, but we're painted with the same brush, and so they scooped everybody, into that program. The other piece, delegation of authority, I don't have an issue with that. You bring the report to us and we, and so forth. I certainly don't have that. The only concern that I do have is the timing. They say up to a quarter, even in the past, I'd like to be more aware of what's in the pipeline. Some of them that are getting close, because what happens is when that you're dealing with a developer or someone and they just don't like the policy and so forth. They call us, and a lot of times when they talk to us, I haven't got a clue what they're referring to. And so I think the sharing or the bringing of some of the information forward, I think is just to let us know. We do that. Essex Power is a great example. Utility Smart. They give us a window. This is in the pipeline. It's not necessarily, and it might not even happen, but it's in the pipeline. So we know, the board knows what's going on as they move forward. So that to me is something that we need to know, because sometimes, as you know, you have called us and said, you need to talk to the political side, and so forth. So I think some of that prep work I think is important. The rest of it, it's legislated. It is what it is. You know, and that, but those are the few things that I'm a little concerned about, but I'm glad. And I did have a conversation with the CAO and she assured me that, you know, we're not going to jump into, you know, getting Michelle out there and let's get the resumes in and so forth. You know, we'll get to know what it is. But my concern is that we know we're getting busier and busier and so forth. So on a normal thing, we might need, you know, to beef up a little bit, but it's how much we have to go. And those are my concern. And what's going to be the sweet spot in terms of what the fees are going to be? Because I have a sneaking suspicion that if we're putting 50% or 100% at risk, we've got to make sure that we cover our bases, you know, in terms of the right fee, so that we're not caught, you know, going to the taxpayer to pay for this and so forth. So I'm hoping that the ministry, as they move on to their legislation, there's some built-in grace periods and so forth, instead of putting the big stick on us right away in that regard. So those are my concerns, you know, moving forward.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, just very briefly, certainly on the issue of, and I appreciate your comments around, you know, the timing and the information, how it flows to council, and particularly in a community of this size. We'll certainly look at how we can come up with a solution to that and how we can simplify a process for access to council to understand what's in the hopper and what's gone through the approval process and so on. So I heard you loud and clear, and we'll certainly look at something to simplify that, make it accessible and, you know, doable.
But don't get me wrong, I don't want the finite details. And say, okay, you know, we're going to dig a ditch here and we're going to do that and so forth. I don't want to get into that. It's just say, okay, we have a proposal here that we have to deal with. And so forth. Just kind of give us an idea in terms of if we do get a phone call. You know, I can turn around and say, well, Mr. ABC, you're a little premature here. I mean, you're only beginning at the, you know, in negotiations and blah, 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 this type of stuff.
Understood.
Members of council. Yeah, go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Worship. To Mr. Hellman, just so I understand the process, how it will now unfold. You know, earlier tonight, we had a proposal for a rezoning. There was a little bit of mention about, you know, site plan and moving forward, council will then, you know, approve a rezoning, and should there be any, you know, site plan issues where a garbage can goes, I believe, you know, we had air conditioning, you know, concerns, those types of things. Those would then completely liaise once the rezoning is approved with yourself, or if it's not you, you know, the approver for that if you're away. And there won't be any other public meetings for you know, for the public for a proposal like we saw earlier tonight. Is that pretty much bang on?
Well, just to be absolutely clear, thank you, Councilor Houston, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So tonight was a rezoning. Rezonings will completely be dealt with and decided upon by council. We will write a report, typically make a recommendation, then council will make its decision accordingly. That will continue. That will continue. The change is that on a site plan that might be associated with a rezoning, or perhaps the land is already zoned appropriately and it's just a site plan approval, that will be filed with the municipality, as would have been the case in the past. And to be clear, it's not sort of the Hillman show of site plan approvals. There's a whole department, and I know, as you're aware, for the benefit of anyone watching, there's other departments we interact with internally, and there's actually agencies we have to consult with externally, and at times our own solicitor. And so our department sort of carries that file and makes sure that everything's dealt with accordingly. But ultimately, here's the change. It will come to a point where we would have written a report to council recommending, just as we have on a few tonight, recommending some approvals. that step won't happen. The final step in the process will be internal documentation of an approval. And instead of having a resolution of council, it will be a document that has a signature of the director or the manager in his place. And the alternative is, because there are two mechanisms under the Planning Act, you can have an approval of a site plan. And those are really some nice, quick, easy ways that we deal with some of the industrial development. But we also have agreements where we want to have some details spelled out in more detail and specificity. When we get agreements coming in, it would be similar, except to what I just said. I will then have a document, the director will have a document that says we are recommending execution of the attached agreement, which is recommended by the town solicitor in form and content, but the signatory will be the CAO and the clerk. In the past, we would come forward and ask for authorization to have the mayor and the clerk sign. The process is very similar right up until the end, but it's totally an administrative process and it's internal. And, to give comfort to council on the CIP program, even there is a component where council gives their blessing to a CIP grant. And then internally, we're doing all the tracking and, there's formal letters, and we ensure that things are done properly before the funds are released and so on. So we will have protocols put in place as to how that process will work, but site plans would no longer formally come forward to council for approval of any kind. I hope that helps.
It does. And Mayor, through you, the one concern, and I know you had mentioned it a little bit, is, the workload, right? And, I think, this is legislation. So, I'm obviously in support, but, concerned with the workload. And I think where I see potential for issues down the road is when residents might not be aware, right? And now they will, be part of a process where they can voice some concerns and, bring those up. Where, moving forward, if those aren't finalized at the time, residents may not be, fully aware, or we may be reacting to, things down the road, which will, just be calls to staff members to deal with those. So I understand why they're doing it, to speed it up and remove kind of the red tape in the process, but I do also see a risk in us being more reactive, and if you understand where my mind is on it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could, again, thank you, Councillor Houston. I think just to be abundantly clear, so right now through the Planning Act, site plan control is exclusively an internal decision-making process in the organization. There is no public component. The Planning Act establishes currently, as has been the case for the last many, many years, even the appeal process is available to the applicant only. And that's the case where, it's taking too long or some other rationale. So, but also at the same time, so it's totally not changing. There isn't a public component where it's tied to a rezoning. Sometimes the rezoning will speak to some of these issues can be dealt with through the site plan process. That would continue. That would be the obligation the municipality has, and it's usually based on our design guidelines, our policies, and so on. The difference is that final approval wouldn't come forward to council, and it could be any number of years past a rezoning that happens, many years or not. So yeah, just to be clear on that.
Okay.
Yeah, because a lot of it, we'll have to be more robust during the zoning period. And usually that's, we have the public meeting, we get the input from the folks. They want trees, they want to burn, they want to, they want a cement driveway, whatever. And so that's where it's actually done. And then when we pass, when we pass the zoning bylaw, the day we pass it, after all of the other stuff's been put in, that's when the meter starts on the other one. Where administration will know that, yep, they wanted these trees, they wanted the garbage bin put over there, they wanted this, and we agreed to that at that specific. That's where I see it. The fear that I have is that, okay, once that's all done, that piece is done, the meter really starts to run. And then it's the outside agencies. Those are the ones that I'm concerned about. And even you're gonna have to make, hopefully you don't have to chase our solicitor or lawyer, because he plays into that. How they get that information back to us is signed off. So that's the area where I'm really nervous, and nobody knows at this stage is, do we have the horsepower to be able to boom, 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 move that. So if we've got 2 or 3 subdivisions going with a couple of more buildings and an industrial building going on, all of that, I see it every day from the department. Nobody's sitting on their duffer here. I mean, they're working steadily in that. So that's my concern to council is that aspect of it, because maybe I'm a doubting Thomas here. I'm from Missouri. It's basically, it's going to expand the need to expand resources, not only in planning, but engineering and others, and finance. That's my fear. And we need to make sure that we've got the dollars to pay for it. Growth needs to pay for that, in my opinion. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, really briefly, I think you're raising some very valid points. I think the added challenges, and you spoke to it just earlier in reference to AMO and your Western Wardens Caucus. This isn't something unique to Tecumseh. We're in a very robust time in Ontario from an economic development perspective, and certainly Southwestern Ontario suddenly is on the radar. We are competing with a lot of municipalities for resources. And so we're all kind of going through this together. We're going to be learning together, but from the perspective of Tecumseh, we'll be looking out for the best interest of, town council and our residents, and looking to ensure that we have the proper efficiencies in place. But the issue of capacity is really a challenging one that we'll all be facing collectively, because we're competing for the same capacity issue.
Yeah. And just the other fear as well is that what the province is saying, we need 1.5 million units in the province, but they don't mention much on affordable housing in that. So a house is a house is a house to them. And but $1 million house doesn't help somebody that can only afford a $200,000 house. So that's another issue in itself. So that's above and beyond the discussion. That'll be the discussion down the road about affordability. Any other questions? Okay, then DS 2020-24, that's Bill 109, the More Homes for Everyone Act 2022 summary report. The More Homes in Everyone Act 2022 summary report and delegation of site plan approval be received, and that a bylaw delegating site plan approval authority to the Director of Development Services, or in the Director's absence, the Manager of Planning Services and Local Economic Development, in accordance with Section 41 of the Planning Act, be adopted. And further, that a bylaw authorizing the directing of the execution of site plan control agreements by the clerk and chief administrative officer, which agreements are satisfactory in form to and content to the town solicitor and director of local services, or the manager of planning services and local economic development, be adopted. Whew. Okay. Moved by Councilor Antonio, supported by Deputy Mayor Becchetti. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Okay. Speaking of site plan control agreements, we got this one under the wire. No, I'm just kidding. DS 2226 site plan control 1305 St. Gregory's Road, LeSueur High School. I'll call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Exactly. This is an example right here. So if we were to go to attachment 2, I believe. Yes, it'll just put that on the screen for all those watching. So application was filed by the school board for LeSueur School for some significant improvements to the parking area and to some of the access lanes. And I'll just review those very quickly, Mr. Mayor. It's the introduction of a new access lane that provides a connection from the soccer field parking area which is just west that the town utilizes of the site. So the top left corner, it will now connect to this parking area, which will allow for ease of movement of the parking areas between these two facilities, basically, soccer field and the school. A reconstruction and enlargement of the parking area to the west of the secondary school, introduction of 3 new barrier-free parking areas just located to the west of the school, or to the north of the school, sorry. Introduction of 20 parking areas. It's labeled new parking area on the right side of the screen, just southeast of the school, and the introduction of appropriate signage. Included with this is some fairly considerable stormwater analysis because of the increased hard cover for the area to address quantity and quality control. And the recommendation to council is that the agreement associated with this, that a bylaw be adopted by council authorizing execution of the agreement to allow for these improvements to proceed, conditional to final stormwater management design and calculations being approved by the town, the owner executing the agreement, which they have, and the owner posting security for performance pursuant to section 6.1 of the agreement. Mr. Mayor, I'd be happy to answer any questions of the council if there are any.
No, I think this is a great improvement on the site, and in particular with the partnership that our Parks Department will have with LaSource and development of the soccer field, the artificial turf, and that will complement all of that extra parking.
Yeah.
And the accessibility to the parking, and that makes good sense. So Councillor Houston.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. I am in agreement with, everything the mayor just said in this report here. I'm just curious because this is an example of, as you had mentioned, something that we just passed that will no longer come to council. I'm just curious how many hours, right, or the work that has been involved in preparing this report. I realize all the consultations will still happen, but this report will no longer have to come to council. So there will be some time savings, and I'm just curious, how long it was to prepare, this report.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Well, that's quite an interesting question. Let me go back on that just to summarize. Something similar will still happen. We have to document in some manner in a file the form of approval that will take place. So we will have to provide some official documentation in accordance with the act that is then provided to the owner and so on and kept for our records. This is a fairly straightforward one, although you'd be surprised on the amount of work that happens between our department and engineering and the review that takes place for the stormwater and just the specs for the pavement area and so on. It's very difficult to put a number to the actual report, but when you go to the signing page, you'll see how many people actually sign off even on something like this, because it touches so many important administrative areas of our organization. So I think, there's a slight element of, even the CAO, it somehow makes its way through a very structured approval system we have here. To some extent that will go away because it bounces through a program system that we have. But a lot of eyes have to go on it. And a few of those at least are partially removed in terms of how it goes through our agenda management system here at the town. But I mean, this was a fairly straightforward report. So you're talking probably half a day for the report development and processing it through a system, and then trying to chase everybody down to sign off. We'll still have similar sign-offs in the future. They just won't be something in the form of a formal council report.
Well, thank you for the answer. I'm all about being efficient, right, and streamlining the process. Whereas, so I was just curious when, we just went through, the previous report, and now this being an example, I was just, wondering on my mind, what it might be. So I didn't expect, 8.5 hours, right, like on your mind, but I was just curious. So.
Yeah, if you look at each individual, what they put into it, that could be, time consuming. I mean, if this was a brand new high school and you're doing a site plan, I don't think you'd do it in half a day. in that regard. But this is a good example, though, of what I was alluding to. Under the new legislation, we wouldn't even known that you were doing this. And this is the one where I say it should be in the pipe, so we know that these are being done. Not this report, but just basically you're readdressing a site plan control agreement, to the school. Because it might be John across the street says, I don't like where that outlet's going out, and so forth, and down the line. So is it after the fact and so forth? But those are maybe, issues, maybe I'm making too much out of it, but I think there's just one where just let us know that you're building, this is what the school wants to do, and we're going to develop a site plan. Okay. On the motion to adopt the summarized report that our director brought forward. And it's a site plan between authorizing the execution of the Conseil scolaire des districts des écoles catholiques du Sud-Ouest site plan control agreement, satisfactory and form to the town solicitor, which allows for the introduction of additional parking areas, improvements, existing parking areas, along with on-site services, works on a 11.7 hectare, which is just under 29 acre parcel of land situated on the south side of St. Gregory's Road, approximately 225 meters or 738 meters east of the intersection of Manning Road at 13605 St. Gregory's Road, be adopted subject to the following occurring prior to the town's execution of the agreement. The final stormwater management design, stormwater management calculation, associated site service drawings being approved, the owner executing the site plan control agreement, and the owner posting security for performance pursuant paragraph 6.1 of the agreement. And that the execution of such further documents as are called for by the site control agreement approved above, including but not limited to the execution and acknowledgement direction required to register the plan site control agreement on title of the lands, such other acknowledgement, directions for any related transfers of real property registration contemplated by the site plan control agreement by the mayor and clerk, and minor modification as the director of development services may approve as necessary and appropriate upon conferring with the town solicitor be authorized. Moved by Deputy Mayor McKetty and Brian, Councilor Houston. And I'm glad this is going to be the last one. Thank you. And all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right. Move on. Again, Development Services 2022-27 zoning bylaw amendment, housekeeping, the ARU guidelines, scheduling of a public meeting. I call upon director to summarize the report and recommendation. And at this juncture, Mr. Jeffries.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I lost track of the other guy. No.
It's my turn. I'm up. When the town's new official plan came into effect, it introduced permissive policies pertaining to additional residential units, or ARUs as they're often called. And that was the first step in meeting the Planning Act requirements that they be permitted as of right throughout the municipality. The next step is to introduce zoning regulations into the town's 3 zoning bylaw documents to permit ARUs in the various residential zones and to establish general zone provisions with respect to such things as minimum setbacks from lot lines, maximum floor area, maximum height, and servicing matters. The town is just about to begin a new zoning bylaw process, and that process is scheduled to be completed in 2023. And it will include ARU provisions in it, but given the recent demand for ARUs and the provincial expectation that they be permitted as of right, we believed it was more appropriate and expeditious to initiate a housekeeping amendment to introduce regulations for ARUs into the town's current zoning bylaw documents. Since the OP approval, We've dealt with these through site-specific amendments, and you'll recall the number of public meetings that we've had pertaining to these. There's been 5 ARU zoning bylaw amendment applications to date, covering this whole spectrum of types of ARUs, including the attached and standalone, and both in the urban and rural area. And this has allowed the town to evaluate ARU proposals and vet them through a public process. We've also conducted a survey of other municipalities in the region and throughout Ontario. And together, those things have informed the establishment of the draft ARU guidelines that are attached to our report in attachment 1. And we won't go into those in too much detail tonight, because the purpose of this meeting, unless I'm asked questions about it, the purpose of this report is to recommend the scheduling of a public meeting on August 9th, 2022 at 6 p.m. in accordance with the Planning Act for the consideration of draft housekeeping amendments to the town zoning bylaws having the effect of introducing zoning regulations for ARUs in accordance with the town's official plan. So we're asking that council authorize that public meeting.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jeffries. Council's pleasure on authorization. Moved by Councilor Tonio, supported by Councilor Houston. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. All right, Development Services, 2022-30 Site Plan Control, 5485 Roscon Industrial Drive, D115485 ROS. I call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendation. Mr. Jeffries.
Thank you once again, Mr. Marius. This will officially be the final site plan that is dealt with at council. If we could go to attachment 1. That shows the subject roughly 0.5 hectare property on the west side of Roscon Industrial, just south of Black Acre Drive. It's municipally known as 5484 Roscon Industrial Drive. Attachments 2A and 2B, please. Actually, let's go right to 2B, please. So Rosati Development Corporation is proposing the construction of that industrial building for a tool making company. And this property is in an area of the town that requires council approval of site plan drawing only, not a full agreement. The site plan depicts the roughly 15,000 square foot industrial building on the south portion of the site. To the north of that is the 25 space asphalted parking area with one barrier free space. It also shows landscaping predominantly to the west of the building, stormwater feature to the west, and a private on-site septic system to the west as well. Attachment 3, please. The property is zoned industrial. Industrial uses are permitted in that zone, and the proposed site plan complies with all the regulations of that zone, except for the southerly yard. We could go back to attachment 2B, you'll note that it's a bit closer to the lot line. It's 3 meters from the southerly lot line. It's being proposed at that, as opposed to the 6 meters required by the M1 zone. And that 3 meter side yard was granted relief by the Committee of Adjustment back in 2000 to permit the 3 meter side yard. The proposed industrial building will be serviced with municipal water and stormwater services and a private on-site septic system. There's a stormwater management report that is currently under review by administration, and the final approval of that report will be required prior to the issuance of a building permit. Public Works and Engineering Services satisfied with the development, subject to that final stormwater management report and associated drawings being approved. We believe the proposal is of an acceptable design. We are requesting a $25,000 security in this case, though, which is greater than the $10,000 that we usually request, and that's to ensure that the installation of an approved stormwater quality unit is undertaken. And the recommendation, Mr. Mayor and Council, is that the site plan as prepared by Rosati Construction and attached to the report as attachment 2A be approved, subject to the owner depositing with the town security in the form of a cash or letter of credit in the amount of $25,000, and that the stormwater management report and associated servicing drawings being approved by the town. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments? Councilor Antonio. Move the report. Thank you. Support. Councilor Houston. No further questions or comments. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, move to legislative and clerk services. Call upon our acting clerk to summarize a report and recommendation, and that's the LCS 2022-21 method to fill the vacancy of the office of Councillor Ward 1.
Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, members of council. The report before council tonight is in regards to the method to fill the councillor vacancy for Ward 1. As you can recall, Councillor Dowie submitted his resignation on June 5th, and council declared the seat vacant on June 7th at a special council meeting. The regulations outlined in the Municipal Act and the Municipal Elections Acts provides direction to council, which they must fill the vacancy within 60 days, excuse me. The town has a policy regarding council vacancy, which has guided administration in preparing this report. In the policy, there are two options outlined for appointments. Option A, filling a vacancy by appointment from the previous election candidate, is an option that council may fill a vacancy by appointing the candidate who ran in the position that was vacant during the last regular election. As you recall, in the 2018 municipal election, the Ward 1 seat was acclaimed. It is possible for council to appoint a former candidate from another ward should council wish to consider option A. The second option outlined in the report is option B, filling a vacancy by call for nominees. In this option, the clerk will carry out the procedures set out in policy 89. An online e-form will be available to candidates to submit their application through the town's website for a 3-week period. An information session will be conducted, and we're recommending Tuesday, July 19th at 5:30 in council chambers. Further, after the notice period is ended, it is recommended that a special meeting of council be scheduled for within the 60-day MEA timeline to select a qualified candidate. It is recommended that the proposed date for the special council meeting be on July 26, which council can review the selected and select a candidate. The appointment then can be made by bylaw at a regular council meeting on the same evening. The resolution recommended is as follows: that the report be received, that direction be given to administration to conduct an appointment process outlined in either option A or B of the policy on council vacancy, and further that the selection of a qualified candidate be scheduled for a special council meeting to occur on Tuesday, July 26, 2022, with the appointment to follow at the regular council meeting of the same date. And furthermore, that a council vacancy public notice be posted on the town's website and in a local newspaper for 3 consecutive weeks and be funded through the council advertising budget. That is my report, and I'm available for any questions.
All right, thank you to the clerk. Deputy Mayor Buchetti.
I think I've asked this question to Ms. Alexander prior. Thank you, Your Worship. So there is no way that this council can say we're just going to wait this out and not fill it, that we have to act. And based on your report, it's either option A or B. So in reading the report, I'm comfortable with option B. In looking at the rationale behind that, it makes sense. And when the time comes, I'll put that forward as a motion. I don't like to see, I know it's not in our policy, but you did write it in the report that if you are intending on running in the municipal election, that it does give an unfair advantage to someone who would be in that council Ward 1 seat for 3 months. And so that is one of the recommendations that's in the report indirectly. And I do agree with that kind of thinking as well. So again, I put forward option B, that this council start doing the nominees and get that Ward 1 seat filled.
Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Ms. Alexander. Thank you for the report. I mean, I kind of feel as though our hands are tied with this, because I know you and I had spoken, and I had spoken to the CAO about it, and We really don't have, too many options, but I do agree option B, and, that is the best course of action. I also feel as though, this is something which the ministry should look at. Should there be vacancies like this in an election year during nomination period, which is open to review this policy. So at any point, if we were to, write a letter to let them know that, this is a clear example where I think they can tweak it, a little bit in given all the circumstances here. But like the deputy mayor has said, I'll support option B as well.
Anyone else? I agree. I agree with previous speakers. B, I think is the way to go. And I do believe that it should be somebody that's not interested in running, but to fill the seat until election. And, it's unfortunate that during a nomination period, 3 months, it's asking a lot in terms of an individual at the tail end of a mandate with a lot of information that has to be absorbed. And for anyone in, that have, the first term, usually the first year, it's just to get your feet wet, in that regard. So at the stage under the legislation, the best option, I think, for the municipality is B. And so I certainly support what the deputy mayor's brought forward and agree with Councillor Houston's comments. And I know that Councillor Tonio was nodding his head and agrees with that philosophy. So at this stage, then, if I could have Deputy Mayor move the recommendation B and supported by Councillor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, move on to B. Well, legislative clerks and service, the request for noise bylaw exemption, Nick Ujla, India 47, call upon the acting clerk to summarize the report and insert recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, we have 3 reports that are requesting a noise bylaw exemption this evening. Last year, Council granted a delegated authority to the clerk to grant noise exemption requests up to 11:30. The reports on this evening's agendas are times requested for the exemption exceed the delegated authority of the clerk. In this report presented to you, the request is for an exemption of the noise bylaw for their daughter's wedding celebration to permit live music at India 47 and on July 6th from 6 p.m. till 12:30 a.m. and at their private residence on July 7th and 8th for the same time frame. The motion recommended is as follows: that Mr. Nick Ujla, located at 12245 Westlake Drive, be granted an exemption from the town's noise bylaw 2002-07 as amended on Thursday, July 7th and 8th and Friday, July 8th to permit music entertainment from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. and at India 47, 1640 L'Esperance Road on July 6th from 6 p.m. to 12 a.m. and that area residents be informed of Mr. Ujla's of this exemption of the noise bylaw and that administration communicate this exemption to the OPP. And further that the OPP be requested to monitor the event for concerns and any complaints respecting the emissions of sounds resulting from musical entertainment. That is the report, and I'm available for any questions.
Well, council's pleasure. Councilor Houston.
I'm happy to move the report and the recommendation.
Support. Councilor Tonio. I'm going to speak against it. For me, I can't support it. I think it's precedent setting for 3 consecutive days. asking neighbors, you know, in that area, especially during the week. And I could see a lot more of these coming forward as we move forward. You know, we get complaints when we had Corn Fest and others, which were traditional 40-year events. If it was one day, I'd say that'd be different, but 3 days, to me, is precedent setting. And so you're going to be getting a lot more of these moving forward. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I kind of agree in terms of that thinking. We just have to be careful in terms of this request. I'm more lenient towards the one weekend request, which this is. I believe that we need to kind of, you know, review this policy and come up with the one where there is a time, because, for example, if 11:30 is our threshold, it's 11:30 and there's no 12 a.m. I'm sorry, music stops at 11:30. And right now, I believe the clerk has authority to stop music at 11:30. And we did that policy so that we are consistent. We start giving in the 12 a.m. and the 1 a.m. And I know the Taste of Tecumseh, that was the Optimist event. I get it. You go there dancing, people don't go in until 10 o'clock and they go, you know, you expect some dancing at least till 1 a.m. You want the band to play its live music, but it is a one weekend. And so maybe we need to look at which are these regional events, like Corn Fest, when we used to have the bands there. In terms of this request here, how does that fit with the Taste of Tecumseh? There are a few others in this evening's report where they're asking for noise exemption as well. And so we're going to be compared to how come it was okay there, or, you know, I would have asked for 12, knowing that you just granted one. So I just want to be, you know, consistent so that when we are asked that we do have a policy, and right now it's 11:30 and I can understand the request is because it's a wedding. However, there's wedding halls, and that's where these facilities like Chicharo and other like Beach Grove have facilities for indoor music. When you do outdoors, it creates this noise nuisance, and people do need to go to bed early and whatnot. So I'm kind of right now in terms of the motion, I'm not sure if this individual, and I know Miss Alexander talked to them, are they amendable to the 11:30, which would allow them at this time without coming to council? And that way we can treat all of the three requests tonight 11:30, which I'm comfortable with. But to start picking and choosing, we're going to be held to account, and I don't want to be put myself in that position where I won't be able to defend.
Through you, Your Worship, I did speak to Mr. Edgela and did let him know that we could look at doing a process where I could grant at 11:30, but he wanted to come to council to ask for a longer period of time, and that's why this report is here.
Well, again, I understand it's a one weekend. There's another one, again, I will speak to that report when it comes, where they're asking every weekend in the summer. I believe that report is 11:30 time though, right? So again, even though we do approve these, my question, Ms. Alexander, would be if we find them to be a nuisance where it is, you know, driven by complaint and we find that it's excessive, are we able to revoke? Because again, having a violin in a patio, like Mr. Aluja may be having a three-piece band and he wants to play till 12, and it's fine, and I'm okay with that. Or does he have speakers with boombox with decibels that you could hear from Tagulis or from their establishment, India 47, that you could hear all the way down to Intersection Road in Ward 5. So where is what kind of sound, what kind of speaker system? If we had that information, I'd be more comfortable, because if it is a guitar, an accordion, a banjo, and they're just playing music, I'm okay till 12 a.m. So if you know that information, that would help me tonight. But if it's speaker system, in decibels and you can hear it down the road, like, you know, I wouldn't be able to support.
Through your worship, from my understanding, it is just music. It's not live entertainment. That would be the source of the sound would be coming from the speakers. But we have no way to determine how loud that will be or what the bass of the music is going to be like. That is the only information that was provided. And I do want to let you know, Deputy Mayor, that this event is happening actually during the week. So it's Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It's not actually really on traditionally the Saturday, Sunday or anything like that. It is during the week. Just for your awareness.
Could we do a hybrid where if we do approve it, if Councillor Houston's okay with it, we try the first night. If we find that it's excessive and there's complaints, then, you know, we say, no, it's not, won't be allowed. You have to stop at 11:30 the next 2 nights. I don't know if that's something that we can consider.
Well, for me, it's we're changing the rules of the game. We extended 11:30, gave the authority to the clerk. Now we're going to move it for this one. And I'm telling you, you're opening up, you know, a slippery slope here. For 3 days, you know, I mean, it's still council's decision, but I have an issue because folks are going to complain, especially during the week. People work in the next day, and some people go to bed at 10:30 or whatever. Young children and so forth. So for 3 consecutive days. And I'm sure it's a wedding. They're going to be dancing. They'll be, you know, having a good time. I don't begrudge them for having a good time. It is a wonderful time, you know, a child's getting married and all this other stuff and so forth. But the same token, are we going to continue to amend the bylaw or amend the noise bylaw and you know, to accommodate this neighborhood, and then we're going to do it again someplace else? Somebody will say, what do you mean I can't do it here? You did it over here, and so forth. So I have a hard time with setting policy on this one. We extended it at 11:30 and for outdoor, and now we're going to do it again. And I mean, it's a wish of council, but I'm still can't support it. Go ahead, Margaret.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to weigh in, but I did see that Councillor Tonio has had his hand up, so I will
Okay,
defer to the councillor, and then thank you.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, Councillor Tonio.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. If I'm on record of supporting it, I would like to change that. I don't support it. Listening to Ms. Alexander and the deputy and the mayor, I agree now that 11:30 should be 11:30. That's our rules. That's the law. And to extend that, the precedent that we are setting anywhere in this town, I think could change people's perceptions. We might start seeing more and more weddings at home because of the cost of a big hall to rent nowadays. And then we'll get more and more of these requests. I think we should stick to our guns. So I can't support this motion. Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Isaac.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe I can assist council here. So just to be clear, first of all, I couldn't agree more with the deputy mayor that the policy certainly needs to be reviewed and bylaw in its entirety. The problem, part of the problem is that there is no time stated in the bylaw, and the delegated authority that was given to the clerk was to allow for exemptions up until 11:30 p.m. And then any that wanted to try to extend beyond that time period to seek an exemption, because there's nothing stopping anyone from trying to seek an exemption till all hours of the night. And in fact, for construction projects, council has granted such exemptions, right? So it's for all purposes, right? And but for the purposes of this particular application, you are within your rights to say, okay, we can't live with midnight, but we can live with 11:30 and grant it for the 11:30. I think the one suggestion that I heard with respect to, allowing it for one night and revoking it for the other two does get a little bit, I think, difficult, given, and I think puts an unfair burden on the applicant in that regard. I would encourage council, if they feel comfortable with 11:30, certainly within your purview to grant that. That gives the owner and the family certainty that they're good till 11:30. It doesn't, it also does not wave a magic wand to say that they can boombox the evening away and and not have complaints. Part of the recommendation does indicate that will be monitored, and there will be intervention if it's excessive. So just to assist you that it's sort of not all or nothing. You're in the driver's seat with respect to the outer limit of what you're comfortable with for this event, even if that's 11:30. The acting clerk did try to talk the applicant in to that, but they chose to want to present it to council, which is their prerogative since they've asked for a later time.
Sure, understood. The 11:30, I don't have, I mean, that's a discretion, I think, that we had directed, but, to your point, I agree, we gotta look at some of our policies and solidify them so that it's not wishy-washy and so forth. I totally agree. This is one, yeah, it needs that. The construction one, that's a bit different. And so forth, but I'm okay at to what the acting clerk in terms of the delegated authority to her to make that judgment call at 11:30. I am okay with that. That's something that can be defended, but if you're going beyond that and so forth, because I think originally I'm looking at, when I looked at the next one, they wanted every weekend and Friday and Saturday, and then there was one of them on Saturday, they want to go to 1 a.m. The neighbors, I know they're going to raise heck, because they have in that area. So I'll leave it to certainly members of council, but I think in terms of the delegated authority to the acting clerk, I think she acted right, and there was a compromise from 11 to 11:30, and I'm okay with that. Councillor Houston?
Thank you, Your Worship. When I originally looked at this, I thought, it is a wedding, it's one time, but listening and hearing, everyone around here, I'm just wondering now if we decline, right, this, does the clerk then, she's okay to approve to 11:30, or would we as a council say, for the 3-day event, 11:30 is fine? I'll pose that question, then I have one other one.
If I could, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I think that at this point, because it's been brought to council, because the application was for later, that we would be looking to council to amend the recommendation to where they're comfortable with. If that's 11:30 for all 3 nights, then we would respectfully request that you move that, and that becomes the permission that the acting clerk conveys back to the applicant.
Thank you. And my second question, I'm just wondering, it is a wedding, kind of a one-time event, I would say, for the family. And again, I don't know how many daughters he has, but, he could have, more than I think he's got more than a couple. So, but I'm just wondering, the one event, the main night, if it would be amenable to allow the 12 o'clock on the one night, 11:30 all others. I just, as sort of a compromise, recognizing it is a cultural wedding, and so I'll just ask the clerk if they have said if there's one main night, or if it's like 3 nights of all the same.
Through your worship, from my understanding, it is a cultural wedding. The first night is the ceremony and the second 2 nights are traditional bride and groom dinners, which will have 100 people at those 2 events on the weekend, and on the main event on July 6th, I think there's about 200 people at that event.
Okay, thank you. I'll make the recommendation then that we approve 11:30, right, straight across the board, make it easy. And then through this, maybe just direction to administration, down the road that we review, the sound policy or the noise bylaw policy, recognizing that it needs to be updated. And then that just come back to council at an appropriate policy and priorities meeting when time allows.
Yep.
So I'll make that amendment and see if I get a seconder.
Thank you, Councilor Houston, and supported by Councilor Tonio. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that, but I'm still a little nervous. 3 consecutive days and the numbers that they're calling, but I think it'll have other issues about parking as well. Where they're going to park all those cars, and then because there's other businesses that are in that parking lot as well, and they need to operate. So I think the OPP are going to be busy, and I hope not. But anyway, I'll certainly support it. So on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The next one is okay, noise bylaw exemption again, St. Charbel's Church. That's one that's come to us. Correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, and that's come to us years.
No, I'll move support
Thank
the
you.
recommendation.
You're gonna move it, yeah, 11:30. For the Friday, July 15th, July. Yeah, and then the other one's at 11 on the Sunday, so that's under normal. Moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported by Councilor Tonio. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. D, request for noise bylaw exemption to bullies call upon. Entitled request for noise bylaw. That's all summer.
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Bichetti.
This is the one I have issues with, because now we need to review the policy before we start doing these type of approvals. The one-offs, the weekends here and there, like St. Charbel, even the request we just approved to 11:30 is one weekend, and residents can understand, look, it was a family wedding, or this was a religious festival, and move forward. But now you're talking about every weekend. And every weekend till 11:30, I think is excessive. And I think this one here, with the clerk, I would look at, is there a specific event or reason they want to do it? But then again, I go back to what type of music are they looking for? Is it a 3-piece band that, with an accordion, I can sit out there with the accordion and play till 1 a.m. and no one's going to hear me? Or are they talking speakers, outdoor speakers, music that would prevent a neighbor to say, look, you know what, I can't sleep, I can't sit in my backyard. What is this, every weekend? Then now you're living downtown, and that I think would be too excessive, and I can't support the way this is written. So I think this one needs to go back, and they need to understand and supply us with more information of what kind of music it is, because again, it doesn't specify here.
Through your worship, from my understanding, when talking with Eddie in regards to this, he did say on the Saturday nights that they have cultural music, live entertainment that would be playing from 9 p.m. to 1 a.m. So he didn't say exactly if it's a 10-piece band or a one-person band. It was specifically outdoor live entertainment.
This is, yeah, go ahead, Madam CEO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there's nothing, just for helping council understand the rules that we have to work within. There's nothing in the bylaw that allows council to make an adjudication based on the type of music. So that I just want to put on the table. Now,
It's
the one thing-
decibels. Yeah.
well, there isn't even decibels, to be honest with you, Mr. Mayor. The bylaw is quite lacking in that regard. But the one thing that I can suggest to you that is different about this, and because it is a request for every weekend, is that there is a part of the recommendation that indicates the last part of it, that the chief administrative officer be given authority to revoke the exemption granted to Tabuli Bayetis for non-compliance with this exemption and emitting noise outside of the exempted days and hours. So this recommendation was put in the report in recognition that there has been some challenges with this particular business in the past, and that certainly we don't want to give a blanket and long-term exemption without the ability for recourse if things go off the rails. So I just wanted to make you aware of that part of the recommendation. Thanks.
Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Worship. Maybe as a amendment, because I do, feel comfortable with the last clause in there and delegating the authority to pull this or revoke the exemption. If we offer, 9 to 11, and again, with the, bylaw being reviewed for timing, the one concern I have is, the proximity of this plaza to residential, less than 100 meters, maybe 2 houses. But I'm also, supportive of, or looking to be supportive of businesses, right, as well. So I think, if we do go 9 to 11 and then reiterate the rules to Tabuli Bayetis, and if they do not follow, we pull it, and we've kind of done our part and they didn't do theirs. So hopeful that maybe they play by the rules.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm concerned too is that there's 2 other restaurants there, and there's another one, there's Aracula, or I can't pronounce it properly, but any Italian restaurant. They have a guitar player that plays outside, nice soft music and so forth. Now you're you know what I'm saying? You got a business, you're doing your thing, and that's great, that's wonderful. Now you got 2 other businesses, they're saying, hey, wait a minute, it's affecting my clientele or and so forth. So plus the neighborhood. So on this one here, I think this is one that's perfect in terms of delegating the authority and with the last clause and it's a week-to-week thing. I think, you have to be, because they have been known. We had some issues with the OPP going there. We've had, very loud music, and actually the OPP felt threatened. And that was during last summer. And so this one here, I think we've got to be pretty solid on this one. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you, Your Worship. I also have concerns with approving July 7th and 8th weekend. If we can, and when we do our motion, that if they do a weekend, I'm not sure when they want to start, but that first weekend that they do want to start, I think it's critical that we do attend on site to see around 11 o'clock how loud that music is and how it's impacting the neighborhood. And then that clause or that motion where the CEO can revoke that, I think should be used if necessary. If not, the 11:30 timeline would work. But I just would caution, I was at an event, and I think Mayor McNamara was one, where it was an indoor facility and the music was so loud and it penetrated through the walls that you wouldn't be able to hear the presentation that was in the next hall. So if we have a wedding here and then you have this business, which is a stone's throw away, it's competing and it's not fair. And again, this one here is not asking for specific events. It's just a summer weekend starting at whatever. So if we give them the heads up, say, look, let's start at this date this weekend, but the July 7th, 8th is a no due to one that's already been approved. And then we'll monitor, because you're going to get more requests, and we don't even know if there's any issues that are going to arise from, like the mayor mentioned, that the other business, the other restaurant that's there that has live music. And with these patios being popular, there's a lot more outdoor seating area, and so we need to be cognizant of that. So I don't know if we could amend the motion to not permit this request on July 7th, 8th to avoid that competition.
Just to be clear, through the deputy mayor, the July 7th and 8th are Thursday and Friday. The 9th is a Saturday. So the wedding would be concluded before the 9th, which would be the Saturday that after this weekend that the outdoor patio exemption would commence. But we can certainly make it to the 16th if that's council's wish. I just wanted to help you clear the dates up there a little bit.
Well, the dates I see, Madam CEO, is they're asking for Friday, July 8th. So is that not considered a weekend for India 47?
Oh, this is,
Go ahead, Jennifer.
sorry, we're on Tabuli by Eddie's, and they are requesting Fridays and Saturdays. So that would be the 8th and 9th. But it is intentions that he would like to start as soon as possible. So if you want to start after the 8th and 9th, we could do it the following weekend for the exemption to start on the 15th and 16th. That is the following weekend.
Yeah,
July.
I'm okay with the 9th because the wedding it concludes Friday night. I just don't want Friday night to be both.
Okay, so Jennifer, I just have to intervene here because the recommendation is only for Saturdays.
Okay,
Okay,
Like the only thing we were recommending was for the Saturday evening.
yes.
Okay, we got to specify that, because when you say weekend, I'm thinking Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Okay, I think that's why we need to review the policy and kind of set it in stone so that it should be kind of clear. And the one-offs that come to us, whether it be the regional events and the festivals, we'll deal with those on a case by case. But these ones here, like the mayor mentioned, you're going to get a lot more requests because being private weddings, a lot of these facilities are going in the outdoor setting. So I like the monitoring aspect of this recommendation, and so I'm not sure if Councillor Houston or Tonio did move it, but I'd be prepared to support that.
Councilor Tonio had his hand up. Tonio.
Thank you. Just to confirm what we're approving here, it's not every weekend for Eddie's at Tabuli, right? We're not confirming every weekend for them, just this one weekend, or are we confirming every weekend?
Mr. Mayor, if I could make a recommendation that Jen actually read the recommendation out to council. I think there's a little bit of confusion and that might clear it up.
Thank you.
Okay. The report is as follows: that the report LCS-2022 entitled Request for Noise Bylaw Exemption to Tabuli by Eddie's be received. And that council authorized administration to grant to Willie Biotes located at 1614 Left Bronx Road an exemption from the town noise bylaw as amended on Saturdays between the hours of 9 p.m. to 11:30 to permit music, entertainment for the summer months ending September 25th, 2022. And further, that area of residents be informed of Tabuli Biotes of this exemption of the noise bylaw, and that administration communicate the exemption to the OPP. And further, that concerns and or complaints on the emission of sound resulting in the entertainment are to be monitored. And furthermore, that the chief administrative officer be granted authority to revoke the exempted granted to Tabuli Biotes for non-compliance with this exemption and emitting noise outside the exempted days and hours.
So it's every Saturday up to and including September 25th.
Right.
Oh,
Now, that's the request. Council is within its purview to decide as they see fit. That is you're in complete control.
no, I understand. This is new territory for us. You know, I don't remember anyone requesting this.
Yeah, but I think we need to review the policy before we do something like this, and maybe just do the one weekend like we've been doing it, and monitor it, go from there, and then.
I
Because
say
like
for
it's-
the month of July or something like that, but just to see. And maybe we'll have a better understanding, you know, from the complaints that might arise. Councilor Tonio?
My suggestion to you, Mr. Mayor, is maybe just we'll approve just the one time right now. That will give us July 9th. We can approve it till 11:30. He's able to have his entertainment, make some money, and that gives us time to review more things with the bylaws, public input, all that type of thing, and give us a better thought process of what our community really wants. You know, we have our CIP on Tecumseh Road where all these businesses, it's going to change. So we should get some more public input of what people really want with these restaurants and bars and outdoor patios and things like that. So
Yeah,
that's,
but I want to, the only concern I have too is that it doesn't give administration a long time to do a little research and deliver this. That's the only thing I'm concerned about.
And if I could, Mr. Mayor, through you, this isn't, the undertaking is much bigger than between now and the next council meeting. This would be something that we would actually put on the work plan, probably for, to be honest with you, for 2020.
Okay, here's my suggestion then, that, okay, they got some 25th. Let's delegate the authority to the clerk's office. There's a clause in there that monitors this thing, and I mean, it'll come back to us if they certainly don't like it. But if it gets out of control, whatever, we delegate the authority to administration, to the clerk, to say no. At the end of the day, you breach your deal with us. I mean, if there's a whole host of complaints after the 9th or the next, and I think we should monitor it as it moves along. It doesn't need to come back to us all the time. 11:30 is the time. And then, the OPP will be, they're there monitoring or might be called upon and so forth. So you'll have enough information just at that point, but in the same token, as we move along, then the administration can come back at the proper time with a review and recommendations on how we can solidify a bylaw that makes a lot of, that's more concrete and more palatable, as we move forward. But in the meantime, I think we just delegate the authority to the clerk's office, and and then we'll monitor the noise, because if there's going to be noise, they'll be calling be calling us, and say, hey, what the heck's going on? So that would be my suggestion. Delegate it to the clerk's office, and then we monitor it on a weekly basis. Councilor,
I will move that, Mayor.
Okay, got support? Councilor Tonio? On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. I think you got the gist of that, Madam, the acting clerk.
I just want to confirm that it's 11:30 that we're going to. Okay,
On Saturdays only.
yeah.
On Saturdays only.
And
Because in the same token, we'll be able to, I'm curious to see what the other restaurants that are there, what what effect it has on them.
And just for point of clarification, and are we still keeping that the chief administrative officer is given the authority to revoke?
Yes.
Administration, if that's the CAO, yep. If it's a combination of the clerk and the CAO, yep. If it's the clerk or the CAO or the clerk, that's okay too.
Okay,
Your worship, I'll just mention through you, Eddie sits as a board member on the BIA. So I will be seeing Eddie. I will certainly reiterate, the rules and the expectation from our hand. And I would just ask to the clerk that she also does the same, and hopefully it all goes well. And
I mean,
I see this as, hopefully he's a good neighbor.
It's consistency, and I think what we're aiming for is consistency in the policy. And not a whole bunch of one-offs will just water down the policy, and then folks are just gonna, they're gonna push it to quarter to 11:45, 12, and so forth. I think this way it's boom, it is what it is. I like the fact that what Deputy Mayor alluded to too. There are functions that have been here for a lot of years. There's exemptions that have been built there, boom, and so forth. And then we need to put that into in proper order, because that can come back and the folks say, well, you're doing it over here and it's and so forth. So I think we've got to button down on this and solidify it. And I think the motion kind of gives some flexibility, but in the same token, it gives us the ability to monitor it a little closer. No, did I call the question, Deputy Clerk, after all there, or Madam Clerk, did I call the question?
not yet. You're just about to.
Okay, thank you. On the question, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. Okay, so that's done. All right. Again, to our acting clerk, we're looking for, again, a yearly thing, Essex Power Corporation appointment of proxy holders of the shareholders of 2022 annual meeting, which will be held this Wednesday. I call upon the acting clerk to summarize the report and bring forward the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, this report is presented to Council this evening regarding Essex Power Corporation, which is holding their annual shareholders meeting, which requires an appointment of a proxy holder. The town is a shareholder and entitled to appoint 2 directors to the board, which is currently Mayor McNamara and Tom Burton. A proxy is only valid for 1 year, and an appointment for a proxy holder is necessary every year prior to the annual shareholders meeting, which is scheduled for tomorrow night. The motion on the table currently is that the Mayor McNamara be appointed proxy holder for the town of Tecumseh to cast its shareholder vote at Essex Power Corporation's 2022 shareholders annual meeting, scheduled to be held on Wednesday, June 29th, 2022, and that Tom Burton be appointed as an alternate proxy holder for the town of Tecumseh to cast its shareholder votes at the Essex Power Corporation 22 shareholders annual meeting if Mayor Gary McNamara is absent from the meeting, and further that the acting clerk be authorized to sign all necessary proxy forms to implement this resolution and to forward them to Essex Power Corporation.
Okay. Councilor Tonio. Move, supported. Deputy Mayor Bichetti. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, Public Works. Public Works, Environmental Services, 2022 AT request to levy 2021 municipal drain maintenance costs. I call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the recommendations within this report is that one, that the report be received, and two, that bylaw 2022-45 to levy maintenance costs for the drains attached in Appendix A be adopted. So this bylaw will allow the town to assess the actual cost for maintenance works that took place in 2021, which consisted on 13 municipal drains. Those costs are outlined in Appendix A and will be assessed out to the affected landowners in the proportions contained within their current bylaws for each drain. The total maintenance costs in 2021 was just over $185,000. Of that, the OMAFRA grant covered about 8%, which is about $15,000, and the town's cost was 33%, just over $60,000. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions or comments? All right, then a motion to adopt. Councilor Tonio, Councilor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Next, again, Public Works, 2022-21, investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, Green Stream Stage 2 water main replacement. Call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. The 2021 intake of the ISIP Green Stream 2 funding really prioritized drinking water projects that address critical health and safety issues. These projects were subject to a $5 million funding cap for total eligible costs and had allocations of 40% federal, 33.33% provincial, and 26.67% municipal. In April of 2022, earlier this year, the town did receive some great news. We received confirmation from the Minister of Infrastructure that the town's application to the funding program was approved. So the town is waiting to receive a copy of the draft agreement, which will then be reviewed by administration and the town solicitor. The final agreement will be brought to council for approval and execution by means of a bylaw. The financial implications of our funding application. So the project that we did put forward is the Centennial and Woodridge water main replacement project. Had a total project cost of $3.5 million, which then resulted in an approximated town cost of just over $933,000. The one caveat is the ISIP project must start work by September 30th of this year at the latest, and must be completed no later than October 31st of 2026. So we do anticipate to start design in September of this year, with construction tentatively scheduled for 2025. And if Your Worship, if I may, I'll go through the recommendations for you. So it is recommended that the water main replacement project, Centennial Drive and Woodridge Drive, be added to the 2022 Public Works and Engineering Services Capital Works Plan, with detailed design commencing in September of 2022. And that the total project expenditures of $3.5 million be funded through the Water Main Reserve Fund, with the understanding that the town's anticipated net costs will be $933,450 under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Green Stream Stage 2 2021 intake. And further, that a bylaw be prepared to authorize a mayor and the clerk to sign a transfer payment agreement between Her Majesty the Queen in right of the province of Ontario, as represented by the Minister of Infrastructure for the province of Ontario and the corporation of the town of Tecumseh, in a form satisfactory to the town solicitor, financial content satisfactory to the town's chief financial officer, and technical content satisfactory to the town's engineer, for the grants received from the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Greenstream Stage 2 2021 intake for the water main replacement project, Centennial Drive and Woodwidge Drive. That includes Centennial Drive from Riverside Drive all the way to St. Thomas Street, Woodridge Drive from Dillon Drive to St. Thomas Street, and the interconnections with Little River Boulevard and St. Thomas Street.
All right.
Whew.
Yeah. Move by Deputy Mayor McKenney, supported by Councillor Antonio. On the motion, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Thank you. Item number C has already been dealt with. So now we'll go to Public Works, Environmental Services 2022-25, Tecumseh Road Storm Sewer Road Improvements Tender Award. Again, I call upon the Director, Mr. Bartnick, to summarize the report and bring forward the recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. In March of 2022, earlier this year, Council approved the recommendations of Report DS-2022-11 for the Site Plan Control Agreement with the Greater Essex County District School Board. The Site Plan Agreement did contain terms in relation to cost sharing of municipal works included as part of the town's capital projects, which is the report brought forward today is the Tecumseh Road Storm Sewer and Road Improvements Tender Award. So the tender did close on May 19th with 3 local contractors submitting a bid. Coco Paving Incorporated was the low tender, and they have successfully completed other projects for the town over the last number of years, including the Lakewood Sanitary Pump Station and Sanitary Storage Facility through Lakewood Park, the 8th Concession Road Trunk Sanitary and Trunk Water Main Project, and they're currently working on the 2022 asphalt program as we speak. Construction is anticipated to commence in July or August of this year. The total project cost of just over $5.8 million is over budget by $1,021,400, mainly due to market increases in inflation that we've seen over the last number of months. The financial implications. So of the $5.8 million for the total cost, the town's share is about 65% at about roughly $3.8 million. There is a cost sharing with the school board. They're paying about 17.5%, roughly about $1 million. And there's also cost sharing with the County of Essex as it relates to Tecumseh Road being a county connecting link. They're also at about $1 million or 17.5%. The town has also submitted this project as a candidate under OSIF to the province, and if approved, the $1.365 million in grant funds would be attributable to the storm sewer component of the project. And Your Worship, if I could read out the recommendations. It is recommended that the tender for the Tecumseh Road Storm Sewer and Road Improvements in the amount of $4,859,000, excluding HST, be awarded to Coco Paving Incorporated. That a bylaw be prepared to authorize the mayor and clerk to execute an agreement satisfactory and form to the town solicitor with Coco Paving Incorporated. And further, that funding allocations reflecting a total budget requirement of $5,809,500 with a $1,021,400 increase to the original allocation be accommodated as follows. And the recommendation does go forward and identify the various increases between the Road Life Cycle Reserve, the Water Main Reserve Fund, the Wastewater Sewers Reserve Fund, and the Storm Sewer Life Cycle Reserve Fund.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay. Council's pleasure, moved by Councilor Houston, supported Councilor Tonio. Any further questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Oh, Mr. Bartnick, you're spending a lot of money. All right, call upon the director again to summarize the report. It's the 2022-27 amendment of the 2022 Public Works Environmental Services Capital Works projects. And so I will get you to summarize your report and bring the recommendation forward.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the purpose of this report is to obtain council approval to amend the previous PWES 2022-03 report, which highlighted the 2022 Public Works and Engineering Services Capital Works Plan. And we wanted to amend this to include the detailed design for the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan area, the Northwest infrastructure projects, as well as allocate funding for project management resources in 2022 and 2023, as outlined in the May 5th, 2022 special council meeting presentation entitled the PWES Capital Plan 2023 to 2031. The financial implications with respect to the report. So the Tecumseh Secondary Plan area, the Northwest water and wastewater infrastructure, does have a total project cost of just shy of 14 million. 4 million of that being underwater water main, and about 10 million being attributable to wastewater. And we were, and the report is asking for funding allocation for 2022 and 2023, totaling just over $1 million. And that would be 300,000 under water main and 720,000 under the wastewater component. Of the total, of the costs related to 2022 and 2023 for these trunk infrastructure, there is a DC component to this infrastructure. So of the 1,020,000, about 815,000 is attributable to development charges itself. So roughly about 80%. There are also financial implications with respect to project management. So we are requesting roughly about $40,000 in 2022, hoping that perhaps that could be used in Q4 of this year, and the $500,000 in 2023 for a total of $540,000. Those would be funded equally, about $135,000 each from the Road Lifecycle Reserve, the Water Main Reserve Fund, the Wastewater Sewers Reserve, and the Storm Sewer Lifecycle Reserve. With respect to the recommendations, it is recommended that the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan area, Northwest water and wastewater infrastructure projects be added to the 2022 Public Works and Engineering Services Capital Works projects, and that expenditures for the completion of the detailed engineering design for the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan area, Northwest water and wastewater infrastructure projects be authorized and funded from $300,000 from the Water Main Reserve Fund, $720,000 from the Wastewater Sewer Reserve Fund, and further that project management costs of $40,000 for 2022 and $500,000 for 23 to assist with the delivery of the 2022 and 2023 Public Works and Engineering Services Capital Works projects as contained within the May 5th, 2022 special council meeting presentation, including the Tecumseh Hamlet Secondary Plan area, Northwest water and wastewater infrastructure projects be authorized and funded from. And then it goes on to identify the $135,000 split between the 4 different reserve funds. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
No, I think you answered mine because I want to know what the DC component of it, and it's about 80%. So there's a lot of recovery there. So council's pleasure. Moved by Deputy Mayor Riquetti, supported by Councillor Houston. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you. All right, item F, again, Public Works, Environmental Services, Oldcastle Stormwater Master Plan Study completion and final adoption. So I'll call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendation.
Thank you, Your Worship. Perhaps I'll start with a recommendation. It seems to be a pretty short one on this one. It is recommended that the Oldcastle Stormwater Master Plan be adopted. Council would remember that you did receive a presentation and an administrative report on the Oldcastle Stormwater Master Plan in February of 2022 and authorized administration to file the notice of study of completion, which initiated the 30-day public review period. The notice was published in the local newspaper and on the town's website and social media accounts. And the 30-day review period expired on March 25th, earlier this year. The town did receive 7 comments, 1 from the town of LaSalle, 3 from individual property owners, comments from Hydro One, the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, as well as the Ministry of Heritage, Sport, Tourism, Culture, and Culture Industries. Copies of all correspondence from these agencies and the public, as well as responses confirming on how these comments were addressed, are appended to the report before you today. Given that the town has addressed all the comments received during the 30-day review period and that there was no Part 2 orders submitted to the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, the Oldcastle Stormwater Master Plan including the specified Schedule B projects that form part of the preferred solutions, is considered approved under the municipal Class EA process and may now proceed to the detailed design and implementation phases. So accordingly, it is therefore recommended the Oldcastle Stormwater Master Plan be adopted by council.
Okay. Council's pleasure, moved by Deputy Mayor Bichetti, supported Council Houston. Questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. This one will be a short one. PWES 2022-32 Les Cross Road via crossing improvements tender results. Call upon the director to summarize the report and recommendation. That'll be a short one.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll start with the recommendations again. It is recommended that this report be received and that the single tender received for the Les Bronx Road via rail crossing improvements be rejected due to the bid being significantly over budget. So as council may remember, back in July of 2021, council did approve that a bylaw be prepared to enter into an agreement with the Rail Safety Improvement Program, a program in which the town received over $1 million, equal to about 80% of eligible cost for the project. The tender closed on May 19th with only 1 contractor submitting a bid. Our consultant had some discussions with the local contractors and they were providing reasons why they didn't submit. It was a combination of the time of work, an influx of other projects during that 2-week period, as well as other concerns surrounding some of the requirements from Via Rail itself. So the next steps in the process, so in accordance with the town's purchasing policy, the tender will be reposted in the fall of 2022 for construction to commence in the spring of 23, where hopefully we get a more competitive bid. Administration will also has also followed up with the Rail Safety Improvement Program staff, and they have indicated we can defer the grant funding into 2023. So financial implications, we did have a budget allocation of about 2.1 million. So the single tender bid received that was in the amount of 4,080,000 was significantly over not only the construction budget, but the total project itself. So pending the outcome, so since the original project application for funding and preliminary cost estimates for the total project, additional cost considerations have come to light. So obviously Via Rail and some of their requirements, as well as some inflationary pressures over the last number of months that I think we've all seen. So pending the outcome of the next tender, administration will assess project requirements relative to available budget and determine the need to request additional budget allocation to complete the work. So really, I think there is a chance that once we do tender that the project may still be over budget, but we're hoping that we'll get a little bit more competitive process with more than one submission.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bartnick. Council's pleasure. That's an easy one. Moved by Councillor Houston, supported Councillor Tonio. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, move to H, the Community Safety Vehicle Tender Award. Call upon the director to summarize the report.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. In March of 2022, Council authorized administration to obtain quotations for the 2022 supply of various vehicles, which included a command pickup truck for the Community of Safety Department. Council had approved an allocation of $55,000 for the vehicle and about $5,000 for outfitting, for a total of $60,000. The request for quotation closed on May 12th earlier this year, in which the town received 2 submissions from dealerships. One of the bids was deemed to be non-compliant during administration's review of the RFQs. So administration is recommending that the low tender from East Court Ford Lincoln be approved. The financial implications, the budget was set at $60,000. The low bid came in over budget by $8,850 and change. So the submitted costs are above the approved allocation by 15%, which triggers section 4.4 of the purchasing policy, whereby the department director must seek council approval for when a project is in excess of $10,000 of the budget or 10% of the budget. With respect to the recommendations, it is recommended that the purchase of a 2022 Ford F-150 Crew Cab XL 4x4 from East Court Ford Lincoln in the amount of $56,999 plus non-refundable HST and emergency services outfitting at a cost of $10,661 plus non-refundable HST be authorized, and that the $8,851 allocation deficit be funded from the life cycle fleet reserve, and further that the funding allocation for fleet replacement be adjusted to reflect current vehicle replacement costs, as part of the 2023 operational budget.
Okay, before I ask for a motion here, East Court Ford, where is that?
I believe it's in the GTA area.
You mean tell me we didn't get anybody from this end of the province, local, to bid on this? Or are we still doing what we did before, just send it out on our social media or on our website? I can't believe that out of the 30 dealerships we got here, we couldn't get somebody to bid on it. That doesn't make sense to me. Sending money to the GTA, really?
Yep. Through you, to you, Your Worship. So we typically post all our tenders and RFQs on the bids and tenders website. But we also have had past practice in faxing and calling our contacts locally here to advise them that the tender has been posted or the RFQ has been posted.
Wow. I like to keep it local, but anyway, go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I don't support this report in terms of going to East Court, even though it is over, but like you said, we do have local, we're known as the automotive capital here in this region, and we're looking at not a rescue vehicle, which is specialized, which I understand, in terms of RFQ, what is it that the local dealers have? We don't need to have certain things. I know you got to outfit it, that $10,000, that's an automatic, it's got to be outfitted, include that in the cost, but have we looked at a used vehicle, 1 or 2 years old? I know when I buy vehicles, the depreciation value on a vehicle, brand new versus a 1 or 2 year old that has 20,000 kilometers, may fit this type of vehicle that we're looking for. So I would you know, unless you need it tomorrow, we've done without for a while. I would do a little bit more knocking on doors, and I know that there's someone locally that you'd be able to bring that cost down. So I can't support that report going to East Court as written.
Go ahead, Mr. Bartnick.
Thank you, Your Worship. So there was one other local bid. However, his submission did not meet the specifications of the RFQ. You know, there are some other challenges right now, definitely out in the motor vehicle area, especially with pickup trucks and trying to source material and meet certain timelines. And I think the other comment is this vehicle is not a replacement, I think, of an existing vehicle. It's a new vehicle for one of the newer positions that was created in the Community Safety Department.
Councillor,
My point is, does it need to be new is my question.
I,
In terms of the RFQs, what you put down, again, I don't have the technical, maybe I'm off base, but in terms of, you know, you're looking at a F-150, and then you got to outfit it. If it doesn't have, you know, I don't know what you're looking for in terms of tech, in terms of the vehicle, but could you do without some of the stuff and get the price down and keep it local? So that's what I'm asking. But again, I don't have the expertise to be able to comment.
I mean, I don't have an issue, Deputy Mayor. I think a brand new vehicle is because it's part of our life cycling piece. The only thing I hate sending money to the GTA, right? And if one thing, if it was a vehicle like a car or an SUV, yeah, you'd have a heck of a time. The lots are empty. But pickups are, you know, because that's their bread and butter, the auto industry. I can't believe that between the 5 or 6 Ford dealers, the 5 or 6 GM dealers, and the 5 or 6 Chrysler dealers, we can't find a pickup. You know, with certainly the specifications. I mean, at the end of the day, I had this issue before, and this is not the first time I brought this up. And we bought a whole host of vehicles. We got them from out of town. And I'm one that charity starts at home. And for many of these businesses, they live in our community, they pay taxes in our community. And here we are buying vehicles 300 miles away. I have an issue in that, but if that's the only one we can get, that's one thing. But again, I can't find a pickup. I don't know. And so maybe they're not getting the right information, or, you know, maybe these dealers don't have access, you know, to the tendering process for small vehicles. I don't know. But I do agree, it needs a new vehicle, and that's part of the life cycling family and so forth. But Councillor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not a vehicle sales expert, but I do know that there are challenges, you know, out there right now. And I don't know, you know, what the delivery was on this and how the, you know, tender was written. But, you know, I do know that, you know, and I share, you know, similar feelings. If we can source it here within the community, it's much better than, you know, going this far out. But, you know, to my best knowledge, we really can't disqualify somebody from being, you know, not local. And if they are the, you know, winning bidder, as per the tender, I would recommend, well, I would be happy to move, you know, the recommendation. And, you know, if we can put, you know, local dealers on a list that when tenders go out, I know I will get copied myself in, you know, my job for, you know, tenders with suppliers. And if we build that, send it out. But, you know, I wouldn't be surprised if it is a supply issue, depending on how the tender may have been written, of how quickly the vehicle may be needed. But I see Tom popped on, and maybe he has some comments.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I see both the chief and Tom have lit up, so perhaps they can assist.
No, I know they lit up, and so am I. I'm lit up. And I just, this has happened before. It's happened way back, and this strikes a nerve for me, as you can see. And I mean, at the end of the day, I agree with Councilor Houston. I'm not saying not to buy it, but I would say the next time you need to really look at local, and because I like to spend our money here. I don't see too many Toronto GTA areas buying vehicles down here, and so forth. So I'll leave it at that. It's at that council's wish, but again, I can't believe one pickup truck, you can't buy it here. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Is it because you can't get the red color? Is that something? I mean, I don't know. Chief or Tom, you want to weigh in? Floor is yours. And I know it's getting late.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what I'll add is obviously it has to be, as everyone knows, it has to be a fair, equitable process, open process, which it was. As Phil had indicated, we did receive 2 bids. One was local, one was not. So the local bid did not meet the specs of the tender, so it had to be disqualified. So, we don't know specifically why we didn't get any more, but based on what we did get, it seems like it's a supply issue of what we were specifically looking for.
Well, I've seen where even local dealers will trade their vehicle for another one and so forth. I think I want to see I want to see how you tender this out. And because I know for a fact, I had other dealers say that they were never notified, or they don't know where to act from there. I'm not saying the system is skewed, or, I'm not looking at the integrity of the process and all this stuff, but maybe the process is onerous, that they don't know or how to access, the bidding process and so forth. That's the only thing that I'm concerned about, because I know a good example. I bought a vehicle at a dealer here, but they didn't have it here, but it did come in from the GTA. So they swapped vehicle and it came here, and with the exact options that I wanted. And so anyway, I know I don't know, maybe you can't do it in that regards, but anyway, I'll let it go at that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not like it's a $400,000 vehicle. I get that, but still, it just irks me. Chief?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I turned my camera on because I was going to speak to the used versus brand new vehicle, but that's already been addressed.
No, we're not gonna get you a used vehicle.
Thank you. No, what I can say is there truly was nothing spectacular about the vehicle specifications itself. It was essentially a heavy duty 4-wheel drive pickup truck with a crew cab. I'm sure Phil and Tom were both as surprised as I was that there wasn't any local bids that qualified, other than the one that we got. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why the more local dealers didn't supply bids.
Okay, well, anyway, I did my rant for the evening and so forth. So I'm get the vehicle, I know, and so forth, but I think we need to be a little bit more, let's put a little more oomph in the local on moving forward. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Again, I'm not going to support it. And again, it's 15,000 over. One bid was disqualified. We just had a report tonight where we went out and we're going to retender because there was only one bid. So we're talking about one bid again. And unless we need this tomorrow or next month, I think we need to do our homework. I don't think we did our homework. And I know people that you can call, and I don't know if it's the town, the fleet manager or whatnot, but they do, they're like a broker, insurance broker, they're car brokers, and you tell them what you want and they'll go out and find it. And if it comes from Toronto, whatever, like you say, to me, I believe in the purchasing policy where the lowest bid, we can't, like Tom mentioned, we have to respect that process. However, if we had a broker who knew who to call and who to contact with their Rolodex, I think we'd be in a better position and we'd find a pickup in this area. But again, I think we need to review on how we do these moving forward, and maybe get someone, a contact that would do the legwork for us. Because again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a car salesman, but I do have friends, and I will be asking them about, in terms of public report, that no dealer in Windsor, Essex County bidded for a pickup, and they can tell me why, and perhaps lo and behold, they do not have any available. But maybe there is a way where we can do better job communication with a certain contact, and that's where I think we need to do a better job, is finding that go-to person. And if we don't have it at the town hall, let's secure someone who would take care of that. So again, I'll be voting against the motion.
Because I think, to Councillor Houston's point, earlier, I mean, it was tendered out, and it was, and it's this company, East Court Ford, are anticipating that, okay, this is a signed deal. I don't know if it was ordered or not, or how long they waited, but all I'm saying is that, if the tendering process, that's the part that's going to be difficult, Deputy Mayor, is that, you have to send it out and they bid in and so forth. To me, there's the process maybe is they don't know how to access it or and so forth. Because I remember being approached and I said, the tender's open, if you didn't bid for it, then, it's too bad, in certainly in that regard. So if this has been allocated to Councillor Houston's point, I think it's the ship sailed and so forth. All I'm asking is to review that to make sure that all opportunities are exhausted locally. Make sure that they do, get the, I mean, it's one thing you're asking them to keep checking to see if we're putting bids out for vehicles, but maybe, a little nudge to say, hey, we're going to be putting out, this is one vehicle, but sometimes we do a lot more. We do 5, 6, 7 and so forth, and make sure that all the dealers, all of them, get an access to put certain bids in. That's all I'm saying. So I think this one here, I think the ship's probably sailed in that regard. So yes, Councillor Tonio.
If I just ask Mr. Bartnick, if we did put it out for tenders, in your experience, what do you think we would get tons of things, or we did our due diligence in sending out our quotes, asking for quotes for this vehicle? Do you think we've done our due diligence and got that finished, or do you think if we send it out, we could possibly get a bunch of more quotes?
I think the process taken was open, fair, and transparent to get a fair market value. I think are there ways to further advertise locally in the future on on the next vehicle or the next tendering process? We can look into that and see if we can put out media releases or direct notifications to those individual dealerships. But I think what we've seen before in the past is it all depends on the vehicles they have in stock, the exact specifications that they have, and kind of the timelines that are being requested of it.
Is this vehicle currently in stock in this East Court dealership right now, or is it being ordered through the dealership?
I don't think I have those details handy, but you know, I would say that they did comply with the RFQ specifications that were put out.
With a certain time frame when we want the
Yeah.
vehicle, correct? Yeah, okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah, because I'm not trying to disqualify this company. I think, you know, they legitimately, they saw it, they bid, and they got it. The only thing that I find is, you know, we only had one other bid. And so I'm wondering if they didn't have the information for them to make a bid. And there's only one of them, you know, that did. That's where I'm at and so forth. So, but anyway, I'm okay. I think legitimately they won the bid. I mean, I get that, you know, out of the two. It's just, I think we need to look at making sure that it's a level playing field for everybody. Go ahead, Councilor Tonio.
I believe Councilor Houston motioned to pass. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
I'll
you're really
support.
dark.
I'll
Your
support his
camera
motion.
is really dark. I cannot, okay.
I'll support a second. I'll second the motion.
Supported, okay, thank you. On the motion, I think we've beat this one pretty good. Anyway, on the motion, all in favor? Oppose if any? The motion carries. Okay. Technology and client services. Oh, Mr. Sean, you're the last one.
I'm not going to say it. Everybody else knows I'm going to say last shall be first and first shall be last, but okay. Hopefully this is a quick report and pretty straightforward. So council will recall back in February, we had a delegation from Miss Josette Eugenie who made a presentation to council. And she outlined an initiative that began in Eastern Ontario about 8 years ago. That's when in 2014, a group from Hastings County down east created what is now known as the Emily Project. And it's a program established in memory of a 7-year-old by the name of Emily Trudeau, who was killed in a tragic farming accident. So these concerned citizens, you know, they asked how first responders could get to medical emergencies and when they've had difficulty in identifying addresses. And on these rural vacant farmlands, there is no civic addressing in Tecumseh. And that was brought to our attention by Ms. Eugenie and the project. We looked, council sent this to administration to look at this program and an initiative that we could possibly launch here in Tecumseh. And we found there's probably about 250 vacant rural properties in the municipality that are not currently identified with the civic address markers. So administratively, we reviewed the process, how we do it now with Public Works and the GIS group and assigning the numbers and issuing the current green civic signs that we've come to know for properties that do have a building on it. We looked at what others are doing in the area and in the province, and there's been over 75 municipalities that have adopted this Emily project, or Farm 911 as it's also known as across Ontario. So we did have some conversations with representatives from the Ontario Federation of Agriculture and some of the municipalities that were early adopters of the project, just to see how it went, what their challenges were, and that type of thing. So the report before you this evening outlines a policy where administration proposes that the town will offer a process by which these vacant rural properties, we can assign the civic addresses, order the sign in the post, and these would be made available to purchase upon request by the rural property owners. And the application and the policy wording will be made available on the town's website. The proposed fee is basically just covering the cost of the sign and the post. So it ranges anywhere across the province from like $30 to over $100 or $150, but we're just covering our costs to get the sign to the residents. So we had consultation with Community Safety and Fire Services about the sign, and we looked at differentiating between the conventional green signs with white lettering. Our proposal is to go yellow with black lettering, again, just to differentiate in the field that this is in fact a vacant rural property. So when first responders go out and they know it's an empty field, that they are looking for those yellow sign markers if the owners have installed them. We did have Ms. Eugenie reach out this afternoon, and she's excited about if the council was amenable to adopting this report and the recommendations contained therein, that she'd be in for the first customer for these new signs. So with that, the recommendation is that the TCS report 2022-05 regarding the Farm 911 Emily project be received, and that the application for Farm 911 Emily project access points be approved for use. And subsequent to this, we'll come back to council with a housekeeping report for our fees and charges bylaw that will address the $40 charge for these signs in the posts. And furthermore, we're just looking at the Emily project access point policy and procedures as attached to this report also be approved.
All right, thank you very much, Sean. I recall the request that came here, and it does make a lot of sense in that regard. So members of council, moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti, supported by Councilor Tonio. On the motion, any questions or comments? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, that's carried. Bylaws. Madam Clerk, I think we finally have reached the bylaws. There's
We have 7 bylaws that require first and second reading, and if appropriate, third and final. We have bylaw number 44, which is the private parking bylaw and towing for 12033 Tecumseh Road East in the Coach House Plaza parking lot. We have bylaw number 45, a levy for maintenance costs for drains in 2021, which was previously reported on tonight. Bylaw number 46 is the site plan control agreement for the Greater Essex County District School Board. Bylaw number 47 is a ZBA for 6780 Holden Road. Bylaw number 48 is the appointments bylaw for the chief building officer. Bylaw number 49 is a delegation of authority for site plan control applications. Bylaw number 50 is the tender award for Cocoa Paving. We are kindly asking for first and second reading, and if appropriate, third and final.
Thank you, Madam Acting Clerk. On 2 readings, moved by Councilor Tonio, supported Councilor Houston. Any questions or comments on those bylaws as presented? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Then third and final reading is appropriate. Moved by Deputy Mayor Becchetti and supported Councilor Houston. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Any unfinished business? New business. Any new business? Deputy Mayor Becchetti.
Yeah, thank you. Just maybe if Phil Bartnick is here, Your Worship, just in terms of some feedback I received on the latest asphalt paving projects that were done around town, in particular Intersection Road. That road that I'm referring to is crisscross with Shawnee Road. I don't know how the RFQ goes, but is there a discretion on, I know we have a road study, number one. I'd like to re-implement our road tour in person. We haven't had those in a few years, but the road study, how old that is, should that be looked at? I don't know the year that was done. But the question I have is the disappointment in terms of the intersection of Shawnee intersection. If you drive down that road there in Ward 4, you'll see that if there were discretions, if we do have a contingency fund to have the leeway to tell the contractor, can you go another 10 meters, finish this job properly? It almost looks like, the road's done, and then that maybe 10 feet, it's all messed up, and you have to actually go see it. I don't know if anyone had the opportunity, but to me, that should have been looked at in terms of discretion wise, and say, look, you've got the crew out here. It's going to cost you another $8,000 if we extend it another 10 feet, but it's going to, make the job look nice. compared to wait for the following year and, you know, we're gonna do the following year, but now you gotta get the crew to come back and you got a whole year and people questioning why it wasn't extended 10 feet or whatever to finish that intersection. So I don't know if you have that leeway, Mr. Bartnick, during these type of projects, or are you kind of stuck with, you know, that's the budget and you can't amend the program that you've asked. So that was a question I was asked. I didn't know the answer.
Go ahead, Mr. Bartnick.
Oh. Thank you, Your Worship, through you to Deputy Mayor Bichetti. So we are aware of the complaint of that area and of the intersection. So it has been logged into our city work system and we will review it. With respect to the roads need study, those are studies that are completed on a 5-year basis. It does give recommendations projecting out for every 10 years. And we do have our manager of public works and transportation go out and not only just review the roads need study, the current roads need study and the recommended works, but he'll actually go out on site and review how those areas are taking during those freeze thaw cycles during any given year. It's my understanding on the Shawnee Road paving part that the paving did take place a number of years ago, but it was on the more northern section of Shawnee Road, and perhaps it didn't go all the way down. Perhaps there was a road segment of Shawnee that wasn't touched. But in any event, we will be looking into that and whether it was a part of the road that has deteriorated or if it was caused by some sort of other, you know, whether it was a water main break or a utility installation. So we will take a look at that because we do go around throughout the year and during the asphalt program and look at repairing small areas that may have defects in them greater than the entire stretch of the road. So that is on our radar and in our system to review.
Okay, thank you. And then again, they've done a good job. It just it almost looks like, you know, you wash your car, but and then you leave your tires muddy and you don't shine those up. And so that was the complaint I got. So in terms of the road need study itself, I don't know if it was Dylan, but you know, was it done in 2010, 2015? What year are we working from? Is it current? And if it isn't, you know, if we can re-implement the road tour. I'm not sure if the new CEO, Miss Evans, if she was part of that. I think we did go on one, but then COVID hit. So it's been a few years. So I'm not sure if it's a fall or spring, but if we can review doing that again, that was very worthwhile as well for council.
Yep, through you, Your Worship, the last roads need study that was completed, it was kind of a combination between Dillon Consulting and Street Scan, a newer company, I think, put forward by LAS. And they did a good job, really good reporting and newer technology that was used. And it was completed back in 2019.
Okay,
and
so that's
it's
good. So it's current.
Still current, yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Councilor Antonio.
Thank you. Just to remind everybody, we got our 100th anniversary this weekend. So I hope everybody can get out to all the functions and facilities and all the things that we got planned. So looking forward to seeing everybody and seeing our community out together for a wonderful event. Thanks.
100%. Go ahead, Councilor Houston.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just wanted to pass along to Phil and all of his team. I know I had a complaint come in just regarding a sinkhole in a cul-de-sac, and the guys were out to look at it, pretty quickly, and they're kind of assessing exactly what is causing this to grow. So just wanted to certainly pass that along because I know the residents were happy that it was acted upon quickly.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything else? Okay, confirmatory bylaw. We need 3 readings to confirm the proceeding of our meeting today or tonight. Moved by Councilor Houston, Councilor Antonio. All in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Any notices of motion? None. Next meeting, Tuesday, July 12th. 6 p.m. Public Council meeting, South Talbot Road Drain, that's east and the 12th line drain. 6:30 Public Council meeting at Sullivan Drain, and 7 p.m. regular council meeting. Nothing further, then adjournment's in order. Move Council Tonio, Deputy Mayor Becchetti, all in favor. Oppose if any, that is carried. And there's no further business, then we can bid you good night. And thank you for your indulgence, and administration, thank you for your patience, but there was a lot of business tonight. And until we meet again, get some rest, get your running shoes ready and polished for the weekend. And it's going to be an exciting time for us. And the weather, I think it's going to be, according to the CAO, who put in a proper order, is going to be absolutely gorgeous. And so looking forward to all of our guests that are coming, and have a great time. You can rest after Monday night.